What up, though, One Pride? This is the ROTL UK podcast, the podcast where One Pride goes worldwide. My name is Anthony Fitzpatrick. I'm joined this evening by Ryan McCluskey on the slightly later date of a Friday, but this is the college football podcast, the PAC's all, folks. And we're here today, as I say, for the college football podcast. What a time this is at the minute. Ryan, Detroit Lions football is back today. Khalif Raymond has a new deal today. College football is imploding. Everything is going on, and you can tell the season is just about back.
Yeah, I saw like a quarter of the Texans game. I've watched the highlights of like Minnesota and that. So football is officially back now. College football, it's pretty groundbreaking what's happening now. It's setting a large precedent for the future. The whole landscape is about to shift very big. And yeah, we're just a few weeks away from week 0, and there's a lot of instability. A lot of teams genuinely don't know right now in the next 12 months what is going to happen.
No, they don't. And like you say, this is something that seems to be developing day upon day at the minute. And, you know, specifically since we did our last podcast 8 days ago, so much has gone on since then already. So today we're going to be talking about these new college football realignments that are going on, the possible ones that are coming, what can maybe be done to the conferences who've suffered here. And then we're going to be carrying on with our conference preview series, still in the G5. We're going to be talking about the American. It's going to be the first half of our recap for that. Big shout out to everyone who's joining us this evening. See Lisa De Lorenzo's in the building. She says, hey everyone, hope you're doing well, Lisa. Brett is in there as well. He says, howdy all. Go Army, beat Navy, go Blue. Starting the rivalry up already. Hope you are doing well. Now we've got some people in on Twitch with us as well. Dan Paskey's in the building, says, hey Ryan and Ant, happy Friday. Hey Dan, hope you are doing well. I will be getting to chat with the legend himself on Sunday on his new show. It's going to be good fun. Hope you're. Hope I'm ready for that. Get to meet Dan for the first time on one of these calls. So looking forward to that. David Reinford is in the building as well. And hope you're doing well. You got any questions this evening? Just let us know. Right, I'm going to very quickly get all the housekeeping stuff out of the way because we have a lot to talk about. So the Rural Alliance UK Discord, if you want in, just let us know. We'll send you a link. The main podcast this week, we were talking about week 2 of training camp, and then we had a very elongated period after the show of nearly 1 hour and 45 minutes where we were sat around, or we were waiting for this big news that was dropping from the Lions that was so supposed to be huge. We stayed on stream, and then we found out it was Teddy. As much as we love him, it was not worth a near 2 hour wait for that, but it's good fun, so check it out. Don't forget to like and sub to everything. Twitch, YouTube, we appreciate you all. Lions Nation Unite, Herman Moore's pet project, his app to bring together the best in Detroit Lions content creators on YouTube. Content by the fans, for the fans. Don't forget we are a Twitch affiliate, we are monetized on YouTube, we have a tip jar, so if you want to do any of that good stuff, that will be great. But, you know, we just appreciate having you all here with us. We have a feedback form on our YouTube thing as well, so if, you know, there's anything you want us to do differently, you got any suggestions, just fill that bad boy in and we will take it all on board. And if you didn't see it, the Sunday just gone, we finished off our tape review series we did about Jahmyr Gibbs, our top overall pick in the draft this year. And do not forget, we will be live this evening as well, streaming, well not streaming, but giving our reactions to the New York Giants at the Detroit Lions as it happens. Detroit's first pre-season game. We cannot wait. Gonna be a late one for us, but hey, the season's back, we're worth it. Yes, Brent, no Mike Evans, I'm devastated. I really hoped it was Mike Evans, but hey ho, what can you do about it? Right, let us crack on, because we have a lot to talk about this evening. And before we get on with the conference previews, the G5 ones we've been doing, we gotta talk about maybe the demise of a conference, Ryan, and that is all to do with the news that the Pac-12 is in big trouble as it has lost 8 of its 12 members over the last year now, specifically sort of 6 or 7 within the last couple of weeks. Sorry, it's lost 9 of its teams, and it's lost 7 with it. No, I was right before. It's lost a lot of its teams going forward, and this all stems from the fact that the PAC was trying to arrange its new media deal. Obviously, right, media deals are a huge thing when it comes to college football now. The amount of money going into this is insane, and every time a new deal's coming round, it puts the conference in sort of that instability mode. Are they going to get a good deal? Do the teams want to take this offer, or are they going to go elsewhere for better money on existing deals in other conferences? And the PAC, as you've been mentioning, has been struggling for so long to try and find a TV rights deal partner to work with, and it came down to a deal that was put forward to all the schools by the Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff. It was to do with Apple TV, and it was a proposal where they were going to stream the games through Apple TV, but you weren't going to get a set. Well, there was sort of a base amount of money which was quite low, and then what you earned after that was incentive based on how many streams you sort of pulled in, how much your team was watched, and it didn't go down very well amongst the Pac-12 teams, Ryan. Ultimately, teams decided, you know what, screw it, we're going elsewhere. We'll talk about the specific teams in a minute, but this media deal for them has been a mess, and it's left them in some big trouble.
Yeah, I think ultimately it played a huge part in the destruction of it. Like how media deals, how teams get money distributed evenly throughout a conference or a division is kind of the crux of how a deal operates. Like if you're always like CBS or Peacock or ESPN, and like they divide the money fairly evenly, then you expect a deal to do pretty well. But on a model that they were like almost offering, where it's like a pay-per-view and you can earn far more or far less than someone if someone doesn't watch your game, it's just not really a level playing field, and it was always going to create a big, upheaval. It left a very sour taste in the mouth. So I feel like the proposal has been pretty disastrous, and they've caused their own collapse. I think it just wasn't a good offer whatsoever for anyone, and yeah, now it's led to 70% of them now just like going elsewhere with better offers and upheaval of all their sports in a pretty quick fashion turnaround, leaving the division not only, like say, a few members, but also a really unattractive TV deal for anyone that wants to join the Pac-12. Like, no one's going to take that Apple offer. It's terrible. A lot of people don't even use Apple TV, or they won't sign up just so they can watch their football program.
No, absolutely not. And we'll sort of scooch back to the future of the Pac-12 in a little bit, but we'll just sort of go through the timeline of the teams who have gone. So, obviously, we knew USC and UCLA last year made the defection to the Big Ten. I mean, this Apple deal is rumored to be something. The base was about $20 million a year that it was going to give to schools, and as you say, you could get more revenue if you sold streams on Apple, which potentially could have got you a lot of money. But just for example, USC and UCLA have come across to the Big Ten, and they have their deal is worth $75 million a year. That's what they're getting from this deal. It's like 3 and a bit times what has been offered. And I mean, the offer wasn't on the table then, but it was still a massive deal anyway. So we knew they were gone. We've talked about them and them going. So we'll sort of leave that one there. But then all the other teams, it's come more fairly recently. So the first one, about a week or two ago now, Colorado, now with Coach Prime there, they were the first ones to announce their defection. They are heading back to the Big 12. And I mean, for anyone who knows their college football, the history there, Colorado, they're moving back to the conference they were in before. So in 2010, the Big 12 was on the verge of collapse, and Colorado sort of made the jump over to the Pac-12 where it was safer, it was more stable, and they went there and they did their business. But now the kind of ship's on the other foot. Colorado are bailing on their conference again, and they're going back home. But this is one of the moves that makes sense, because they actually have all their historic rivals in there. So they've played Kansas 70 times, they've played Iowa State 65 times, they've got rivalries with Texas and Oklahoma as well. So this maybe was the least surprising of the lot, right? This might have happened even with or without the TV deal thing. Coach Prime's going to go. He can recruit in Texas now. You're going to be in that area, and for Colorado, it's a move that makes sense for them. But yeah, they seem to be the harbinger of doom for conferences when they're on the rocks and they start a move.
Yeah, as you say, they didn't need anyone to go with them. They were going to do this on their own, and the Big was happy to have them back. As you say, a former member, it kind of just makes sense. It's like almost a legacy school. The transition over is really easy, and their fans were never really going to stand in the way of it or cause an uproar because it's kind of what they're used to. So, yeah, like I say, with Coach Prime, with the Sanders brothers, like I say, they're seen as probably a bigger market now than they were back then when they left. So, yeah, I understood that move, and they did that off their own back, not because they felt like they had to join together and kind of force their way out or back the conference into a corner like the others have clubbed together.
Yeah, exactly. So for Colorado, move makes sense. They're on their way back to the Big 12, but then this is where it starts to get a little bit funky in terms of the move. So Washington and Oregon were the next to move. They're following UCLA and USC to the Big Ten. However, this is where a lot of people in the Washington and Oregon circles are not happy, because they are only going to be receiving about 50% shares of Big Ten media rights revenue. That is to the tune of about $30 million in 2024. Give in mind that UCLA and USC are getting about $75 million a year. Washington and Oregon are only going to be getting 30, and with that they get an annual $1 million escalator until the completion of its new deal with CBS, Fox and NBC. That's according to ESPN there. An Oregon official has come out and said that the Ducks and the Huskies, they will be in line for full shares of the media rights once the next contract is signed. However, that is not till 2030, so they are going to have 7 years basically of diminished returns. And Washington, one of their big concerns with this is it's going to be factored in. When you do all the additional travel expenses of travelling from the West Coast to the East Coast every week, because the nearest Big Ten school to all these guys who are going over is Nebraska, which is 1,600 miles away. That's the nearest. But the additional travel expenses are meant to be racking up a bill of up to $10 million each per season, which is going to eat into a chunk of their payouts. That's going to put their net revenue about $20 million annually, which is what they were getting offered by the Pac-12 for the Apple agreement, for the base of that, and they could have made more from it. So, I mean, for Oregon and Washington rights, this is a lot more concerning because they're taking a much lesser deal than what their conference mates have to go over. And there's 7 years now where they are going to be financially handicapped against everybody else until the new media deal comes with, not to mention with the fact that the travel schedule is going to be absolute chaos. So for them, this makes a lot less sense for them to go across.
They clearly must be very unhappy. Like I say, to back themselves into a corner for a number of years tells me they would have taken any offer possible to leave the Pac-12, and they were miserable. Clearly, like I say, because they're going to struggle with mileage, with costs and revenue for the next few years. They really don't care. They're just glad to see the back of the original conference, which tells me what things must have been really, really bad. Like I said, I think Washington, are a bigger body than Oregon, me personally. But yeah, compared to USC and UCLA, they're making a pittance, and they're kind of like where like you get to like primary school, or you join a big school and like you pick someone that's going to be your friend and you're going to get through this together. They're kind of just joining there and doing it together. This would have never made sense for one of them to do it on their own, so they're kind of clubbing together and just going to grit their teeth and bear it. Yeah, in the next few years will be interesting to see if the football declines, if how they decline on and off the field. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and you hit it on the head there. Brent asks 50% only. Why would they agree with that? And as you've said, it's kind of think it's irreparable damage with the Pac-12 commissioner and the Pac-12 hierarchy. They just want out, and they'll take whatever money they can get for it, and they're just sort of hedging their bets that in 2030 some kind of super deal comes out with this new big conference that they'll reap the rewards from long term. But 7 years is a long time to hamstring yourself.
They must also be thinking as well that being in the big carries more weight with the playoffs.
Maybe.
Like I say, Pac-12, like I say, has always been, looked down upon. Shit talked about it. It's been seen as the worst Power 5 conference by far. And if you go and run the table there, it doesn't carry as much weight. So they must really like their chances at competing in the big and getting a playoff berth. To earn, there must be extra revenue for getting to the college playoffs, like I say. So that's the only thing. That must be a thing they also think that will bear extra fruits potentially.
It is, but it could bite them as well because the expanded college football playoffs are coming, but you're going to be in a conference with UCLA and USC for one. Then you got Ohio State, you got Michigan, you got Penn State, which hopefully are emerging into a bit of a power now. It's like you could soon get bogged in mediocrity in the Big Ten and miss out altogether, and then that really screws you. So, yeah, Oregon and Washington a bit of a weird one, and then to finish it all off, the remaining four corners of the four corner schools, Arizona State and Utah, they followed Colorado to the Big 12. They saw things were disintegrating and they got in on the Big 12 action. I mean, for Arizona, great for them because, aside from being known for, the football program, they are primarily a basketball school. That now puts them in with the likes of Kansas. I think Gonzaga are part of the Big 12, although not football in there. So it's a big boon for Arizona's college basketball program. Obviously, the football program will feel some benefits as well. And then, Ryan, Holy War is re-engaged. Utah and BYU are going to be conference mates once more. And we will hopefully get a lot more renditions of that going forward. But, the three schools, it kind of felt inevitable when Oregon and Washington went. Those three more sort of southern-based schools in that area were going to look to move as well. And the Big Ten was the destination for them. What are your thoughts on that? I suppose, been an Arizona State fan yourself. How do you feel now that those three have made the move?
I mean, Arizona and Arizona State, if one went, the other were going to go with them. They're not going to leave behind the Territorial Cup. Like I say, it's a good rivalry. It's an equal rivalry. And those two teams, well, one's trending up, which are the Wildcats, and in the last years, one's been trending down, the Sun Devils. So there I am now. It would have been like if one of them shifted, the other one goes, well, you're not bloody going without me, so I'm coming with you. And then, Utah get BYU. That's almost a losing in itself to go because the Cougs are there, and like I say, the Holy War. So, and Utah don't get much respect the last few years. Like I say, the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, they have been bloody good. And they've been really powerful, and they will go in there and think, like I said, they can be instantly a big player. And it's a pretty big market because it's a huge state. So, it made sense ultimately for these to go. So, and then the rest of the Pac-4, it is truly threadbare.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there. So the 4 teams who are left now, Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford. So, I mean, you've got really no footballing powerhouses left at the moment. It's just 4 teams who are going to be in a holding pattern as the Pac-12 attempt to try and make something out of this. So I guess the question is, what can they do next? Trying to save it as a Power 5 conference is going to be difficult because you've lost your power teams. These 4 that are left are kind of, they're the nice sort of middle of the table, lower mid the table teams you need to create a Power 5 conference. And now you've not really got anywhere to go unless you get cast-offs from another Power 5 conference. But again, you're not getting any true headliners. I mean, I guess the thing is, you try and merge it with the Mountain West. You try and get Boise in, you try and get San Diego State in, even hell, try and bring Air Force in there. Some of these bigger, better schools, I mean, could that ever work as a Power 5 conference, or would it just have to, I don't know, lose that status and maybe create a second, a sixth group it'll be a group of 6 conference then, and have had it that way?
The way I see it is that the Pac-12 is not going to get any Power 5 schools to join it. I just don't see who would. Why would they? With that if that Apple television deal goes through, it's screwed. Now the alternative is, like say, do the 4 teams either one go independent, or do they join a Power 5 or join a group of 5? Do you just disband the Pac-12? I don't even know if you're allowed to do that. I don't even know if that's legal. Like with the other sports going around it, can you just get rid of a conference altogether? That seems like a very complicated, and I imagine that will have implications with sponsorship, so that seems very unlikely. So, but then taking a Power 5 conference and adding 3/4 of a group of 5 teams, like essentially watering it down, does that make things worse? Will then they just be like, well, actually, we remove our TV rights. Actually, we don't want Air Force, and we don't want Fresno State and San Diego State. Maybe that'll screw it. So I think for right now, I don't know, I think you sit tight. I think right now they're going to have to sit tight for 2023. Just play their schedules, and we'll probably see how it pans out. But yeah, the Pac-12 disbanding seems like the last option. I just don't think that'll happen.
Yeah,
because you create a domino effect. If you take nearly all of the Mountain West, then what do the Mountain West do a year later? Do they try to get all the FCS yards? Like it says, you leave a hole, you fill a hole. It's just in a really bad way. Like I say, it's the reputation of Pac-12 has been destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, in terms, I think, of refilling the PAC's roster with Mountain West teams, I think the only way you can do that is if you bring in the UAC conference from the FCS. That United Athletic Conference where all 9 teams want to join the FBS. They were trying to make a 12th conference in the FBS, and they weren't allowed to. Well, a lot of those teams are based sort of Texas way, North Alabama's in there. You've got Stephen F. Austin in there. You've got teams that you can sort of, I mean, Utah Tech's in there as well, so you can put them into the Mountain West. I guess that would be the only way, where you can sort of merge those two and take the bigger teams out the Mountain West and put them in the Pac-12. But then, you probably have about 10 teams. So that's the only way I can see that happening, is if you make a deal with the United Athletic Conference as the Mountain West. But they won't want to lose their best teams either. So it's a big mess. And as Ryan says, we'll have to wait and see. But that is basically the timeline of what has happened. And as of now, the PAC is in a hell of a lot of bother. The last thing I quickly want to mention before we move on to the conference previews, I mean, what's this going to do for recruiting out there now? Because you think you're a West Coast kid, you're going to play for USC, or you're sort of in that area, the Los Angeles area, San Francisco area, whatever, wanting to play at these big schools. You've kind of got a choice now, don't you? Because before, when you played in the Pac-12, you could stay on the West Coast, stay in the climates, work there. You've kind of got a choice now, because you're either going to be getting recruited to like the Midwest or the Deep South, kind of one or the other, because you're not going to have really a conference to play where you're at. I mean, how is it going to affect scouting out there? It just feels really weird when it comes to recruiting. It's like, are they going to be able to maintain the recruiting prowess over there, or are teams like from anywhere going to be able to come and start poaching these guys now, if they're going to have to come and move over the country regardless of what they do, whatever they do?
They're going to lose some recruits. Some recruits go to these teams because they want to stay close to home. They don't want to go play in Rutgers, New York next week. They don't want to go play in Wisconsin. They don't want to go play in bloody, like say, the Northeast. They'll be like, actually, I might go to Cal or Stanford, and then just, might not be the best, but I'll get a good degree and I'll play football and not have to travel 1,000 miles every week. It's really gonna make some players put them off. there's a lot of traveling college football anyway, like you say, but going from, like, say, Stanford to Washington is not like going from Oregon to bloody Nebraska. That's mental. That will take out. That could affect your studies as well. Like, giving that much time up to football and travelling, that has to take its toll. So yeah, I feel like you're going to see some players now get scooped up by Oregon State, Cal, Stanford, and Washington State. They could actually benefit from this, from players that want to stay on the West Coast.
Especially if they can create some form of schedule where they can stay over there and play frequently against good oppositions. So yeah, it's sad. You know, you kind of want to see the Power 5, you want to see sort of the even distribution there, but it started, maybe we're going into the Super Conference era now. The SEC has 18 teams, I believe, and now the Big Ten's going to have 16 going forward, and that's probably just going to get worse, because there's the other rumblings as well before we close this out, that Florida State and Clemson are looking to force their way out of the Atlantic Coastal Conference, and then obviously that's probably an SEC deal for them, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose with the ACC. So I don't know, maybe there's a merger in there. I know it's opposite ends of the country again, but maybe that's where the Pac-12 ends up going, you know, something with the ACC
to retain your P5 status. Maybe go to P4. Yeah, they might not like it, but a TV deal where they try it for a year, they merge who's left from the ACC and the Pac-12. It sounds a disaster, but yeah, they might have to. If FSU and Clemson do decide to bail, it'll mean the ACC is totally wide open, and it'll be interesting. And there'll still be quite a good amount of teams left, but the TV deal is a lot of Florida State fans, like say, that will the money still be distributed evenly? Will it lose just millions of views when you lose those two big programs? Will people just stop watching? And then whoever the provider is just like, well, this suddenly isn't financially worth it for us. So, yeah, I reckon in next year or two, you're going to see a lot of FCS applications get fast tracked. They're going to start throwing teams up now. Let's see if they can finally get some of the big teams to budge that have been very comfy.
Yeah, I mean, if you are going to make a desperate gamble as the PAC, get the Dakotas up. Try and get those two. It's not all the way over in the northeast then, and it's two bigger teams who people will pay to watch. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting period. So we'll leave it at there. The Pac-12 is in a lot of bother, but that is everything that has gone on so far. And as I say, we will keep tabs on it going forward. Brent goes, Power 2, lol. Well, you've got the Big 12 as well. That's got a lot of teams in it now, so you probably have a Power 3 of some form. Maybe a fourth, who knows? But yeah, it's gonna be fun, people. Right, we're gonna talk about college realignment no more, and we're going to move it across to the reason for the show today, and that is our continuing conference preview series. We have done the CUSA, we've done the Independents, we've done the Sun Belt, we've done the Mountain West. Now is the turn of the American Athletic Conference, and that has also undergone some seismic shifts this year in terms of realignment from when we last did this 12 months ago. So the American, founded in 1991, its current champions are the Tulane Green Wave, one of the feel-good stories from last year. Currently made up of 14 teams, so you've got Charlotte, East Carolina, Florida Atlantic, Memphis, Navy, North Texas, Rice, the Southern Methodist University, the SMU, South Florida, Temple, Tulane, Tulsa, the University of Alabama, Birmingham, also known as UAB, and the University of Texas San Antonio, also known as UTSA, the reigning CUSA champions. So it's quite a widely varied conference this is. So you have Temple all the way up in Philly, and then you sort of go all the way cross country to Kansas, down into Oklahoma, into Texas, down to Dallas, to Houston. Then you kind of come back across the coast to Louisiana, down into Florida. So this is a conference that's got some good travel distances in it as well, and obviously you come up into the Carolinas to end that off there. Major departures this year. So Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF have left for the Big 12. So Big 12's just got 4 teams from the Pac-12. Well, it's got 3 from the American this year. Gone there now. New arrivals. There are 6 new arrivals in the American. They all come from the CUSA. So that's Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UTSA. So you kind of got a half and half dynamic here. It's nearly half American teams, half CUSA teams this year, Ryan. This was the Group of 5 conference that had the biggest, realignment this year because they'd lost so many teams themselves. They were already down on numbers. The Big 12 came calling, so they went and raided the CUSA. This is a smorgasbord of different styles of teams this year. It could be a very interesting conference.
Without being rude and no disrespect to them, when you look at who they lost and who they gained, it's like one week you're dating Gal Gadot and the next week you're dating Guy Ritchie. Like, it's bad. Like, to lose one of the best basically the best program in AAC history, like Bearcats, like what they've achieved, and then replace them with someone like, no respect, UTSA, like, even Houston Cougars, a massive program. Like, say, yeah, so like North Texas, I like them as an addition, like say, but the rest of it feels a bit like it's just square pegs and round holes. I feel like maybe they're just biding their time because they know that they're definitely going to change game within a year. And probably going to lose another half of them and regain a half. But yeah, it feels like they've got weaker but more consistent across the board.
Yeah, and obviously you've got a few more teams in there now as well, so you're going to have a bit of a competitive edge in there.
It's it's totally wide open. This is a bizarre conference to try to predict. Now you've lost Houston, Cincinnati.
Oh yeah, this is the theme of this. There is a big power void at the top now. Obviously, Tulane won it last year, and then after that, it's kind of a who's who of, you kind of had the guys from before, and then you've got the better teams coming from the CUSA. So obviously UTSA 2-time champions, so who knows how they're going to do, probably in the best position, North Texas, but we've got some good ones. So we're going to go through all the teams. We're going to do it in halves because obviously these take a little bit of time because we want to do them properly. So we got 7 today and 7 on our next show. So the 7 we're going to take a look at today: the Charlotte 49ers, the East Carolina Pirates, the Florida Atlantic Owls, the Memphis Tigers, the Navy Midshipmen, the North Texas Mean Green, and the Rice Owls. Oh, there's 2 lots of owls in here. How good. We are an ornithologically dedicated conference this week. So without further ado, let us dive down into this. And one of the fun teams first, because their head coach got in a little bit of a tiz recently, and it was fun to watch. The Charlotte 49ers, weirdly enough, the very first team that we ever did one of these conference previews about last season, because we started with the CUA first and they were alphabetically top of it. We've come full circle. They are established in 2013. They play at the Jerry Richardson Stadium. 2021 record. They were 5-7. They went 3-5 in the CUSA, but I took them up a big game last year. Big fan of Will Healy, and everything went wrong. 2022, the record was 3-9, and they were 2-6 in the CUSA. So they actually regressed, meaning that Healy got fired pretty early on. Actually, bless you. The rivalry is with Appalachian State. That is a contested rivalry there. The coach, for any Michigan Wolverines fans out there, you'll know who this guy is. Biff Poggi. It's his first season. He is 63. This guy's been a high schooler for life. He spent 30 years in the Baltimore high school scene, 27 of those at Gilman School, where he was a head coach for 19 years, winning 13 state titles. He spent 1 year as an analyst at Michigan. He then went and created and coached a football team from scratch. I think we mentioned this when he was hired back in December. St. Francis Academy. He was on the board of directors or whatever they call it there. He created the football team and head coached it from scratch, and in 3 years he turned it into a bit of a high school power. They sent players to Alabama, to LSU, to Notre Dame, to Michigan. amongst others. There was even a HBO documentary made about it titled The Cost of Winning. In 2021, he went back to Michigan as assistant head coach. He's been widely credited as one of the main guys who has helped Jim Harbaugh turn that ship around at the Wolverines, because it was very tenuous when he went there. If you want to read a bit more, Bruce Feldman wrote a really good piece about this in The Athletic, breaking it all down. The 49ers, however, does represent his first venture into head coaching in the FBS, and he's already set his stall out. I mentioned he'd had a little bit of a tiz at Media Day for the American. The media polls had ranked his team dead last in the AAC, and when it came to questions and answers with him, they asked him just 3 questions in which he basically redactedly told them to go screw themselves because they didn't care about him and that they were all going to be sorry for doubting him. It was good TV, that one, Rosrai. Biff Poggi, he's come in, he's an experienced guy, but this is his first job. They are ranked dead last by a lot of analysts in teams of strength this year. This is going to be a very difficult job for him, but you know, he's got the experience. What do you make of this appointment by Charlotte?
I like the appointment. Like you say, he's been around the blocks. He's worked with some really good people to learn off of. It's a program right now that only weighs up. They need someone experienced. They need someone a bit fiery. The press conference was a bit weird, like you say, because everyone had every right to basically rule them out, and like you say, to throw your toys out of the pram and just be like, actually, screw you all, don't want to care about your questions because you don't like me anyway, kind of attitude. It was very juvenile. I understand it did get ridiculed, which I do understand, but it shows that he cares. I'll give him that, like you say, and it's going to be interesting to see come back at the season. Like I say, people are going to watch carefully how they did. So he's kind of created this own kind of media storm around him now. Because if they do terribly, I'm sure he's going to get some stick for it at the end of the year. But if he does have a surprisingly good season, I expect this won't be the first time he blurts something out or goes on a bit of a tirade. So it's going to be fun to watch, whatever happens.
Yeah, I kind of had a little bit of a Jim Mora-esque thing about it. It was quite fun. I enjoyed it. I like it when a coach shows passion. And to ask him just 3 questions about his team after an entire summit is a little bit insulting. So the team he's taking over in 2022, the results, they have wins at Georgia State, at Rice, and versus Louisiana Tech. The losses, and there were a lot of them, they lost at Florida Atlantic. They lost at home to William and Mary, where our own Corby Sourstall has just been drafted from. They gave up 41 points at home to an FCS team. They lost at home to Maryland, at South Carolina, versus UTEP, at UAB, versus Florida International, versus Western Kentucky, at Middle Tennessee. The 2022 stats, the total offense was 68th. No, nothing wrong with that. 387 yards per game, but the total defense, 128th in the nation. They gave up 483 yards per game. The scoring offense was 91st, so nowhere near as good as the amount of yards they got. Only 24.4 points per game they averaged. The scoring defense was 129th. They gave up 39.4 points per game on average, so basically call it a 40 burger every week. The rushing offense was 109th. They only had 116 yards per game, 13 touchdowns, and only went at 3.75 yards per carry. And the rushing defense was even worse. It was 121st. They gave up 205 yards per game on the ground, 29 touchdowns, and 5.16 yards per carry. Passing offense was a lot better. It was 26th, 271 yards per game, 27 touchdowns, but the passing defense was 121st, just like the rushing. They gave up 280 yards per game and 28 touchdowns through the air. In team sacks, they were 119th with 17. Tackles for loss, they were 90th with just 62. Sacks allowed, they were 96th, they gave up 34. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 56th, they gave up 65. And turnover margin, They were 119th. They gained 13. They lost 21 turnovers. Don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to realise where this team was bad last year, Ryan. The defence was nigh on historically bad.
Yeah. Fixing one thing will not make a difference. Like I say, you started off well when how many yards they scored on offence, and then you realise they were miserable in the red zone and turned none of it into points whatsoever. So they flattered to deceive in yards per game, and then if your team is basically starting at a handicap of like minus 35 every week, and then you have to try to overcome that to win a game, winning any game at all is basically a miracle. And William and Mary, they tried one of the best FCS offenses in the whole country last year. They were absolutely dominant. Still no excuse for an FBS side to lose to them, and not that handsomely, getting absolutely arse handed to them. So, yeah, he has really got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, it was not pretty in anything. The defense was just battle on the board, and the offense struggled. I think they went through 3 or 4 quarterbacks. It just didn't work, and that's a shame for Will Healy. I had big hopes for him last year. He was meant to be one of the up-and-comers in the G5, and his career has just taken a big drop-off, and he has yet to emerge anywhere else just at the moment. But let's look ahead to what Biff Poggi is going to be dealing with this year. The quarterback, Jalen Jones, probably. He is 6'3", 205 pounds. Last year he was the starting quarterback for Bethune-Cookman, so he's coming from the HBCUs. He reunites with Poggi. He was part of his St. Francis High School team. He moved around in college football. He started at Florida, then he went down to Jackson State, then he went down to the Mississippi Delta Community College in JUCO. But he's beginning his rise back up, first through Bethune-Cookman, and now he gets his go at Charlotte. He's a legitimate dual-threat quarterback. Went for 2,284 passing yards last season on 58% passing, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Had 837 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground, though he did have 12 fumbles, which is a big problem that needs to be solved. But it's kind of a theme that he's going back to players that he's worked with at St. Francis here. But, I mean, these guys who send out the FCS, a lot of them take to the FBS really well. So it's good that he's got at least a guy with starting experience who's on the rise at the moment and who he knows.
Yeah, and it's not the worst school to come back to the FBS when you've kind of worked your way down and back up. No pressure. Also, no starter in place really to battle out with. He's kind of the presumed starter, so if he's trying to resurrect an FBS career, this may well be the best place to do it, with a head coach that you know, and in a team that couldn't be much worse on offense. Like I said, he didn't score any points, so he actually has the opportunity to be the catalyst to turn an offense around, and really quickly. That will actually get a lot of eyes on him this season if he does give them a bit of a spark that they lack. So, yeah, it could be the perfect bounce back platform.
I've just seen David Reinfeld's put in Twitch here. He goes, hey, my wife went to Rice, go easy. Rice are in our schedule today, David, so I promise I'll try and be nice about Rice, but I can't remember if my write-up was or not. I also asked me some questions back. I'll get back to those Pac-12 questions later, David. Sorry I missed them. I was not looking at Twitch at the time. Right, so the season preview in general. So it's a new beginning for Charlotte, new head coach, new conference to play in. They've never threatened the CUSA championship game. Instead, they were more of a mid-table punching bag for the better teams in the conference. Will the change of scenery inspire legitimate championship aspirations for them? Well, maybe not right away. They've lost most of their best players and they are heavily relying on the portal. There's 31 new arrivals. I believe that's gone up to 37 since I did this. They're number 125 in returning production. And that offense that was much better than the defense, they're number 132 in returning production on the offense. They're only bringing back 21% of their offensive production last season. On offense, whoever ends up getting the job will be a starting FCS quarterback here. Did I miss somebody on there? I think there's someone else on it. No, I think I missed that out. So yeah, it's going to be a new starting FBS quarterback for the first time. Jones has the potential to be good, but they'll need to put the pieces around him to help him succeed. He is in good hands, though. The new offensive coordinator there is Mike Miller. He comes in from Maryland, where he was the co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach. Obviously, Maryland, you Big Ten guys know, they run that high-tempo, explosive offense with a lot of 11 personnel. That's allowed Taulia to excel at quarterback. He's also coached quarterbacks as well. Miller, he was Garrett Schrader's quarterback coach at high school. You know, the dual threat. Well, I say dual threat in the nicest possible way. Syracuse quarterback, but he worked with and developed dual threat guys, so that's going to bode well for the quarterback there. The running back room brings back its top guy in Shadrick Bird. He had 620 yards on the ground, 840 yards altogether with 5 touchdowns. Behind him, though, for the most part, is a bunch of freshmen and redshirt freshman guys. They do bring in a transfer from Towson in the FCS, Joachim Bangda. He had 362 yards last year. A Northern Illinois transfer, Teron Kelman, arrives. He redshirted last year, but there's a lot of hope around him. Both these guys also played at St. Francis, so he's bringing in a lot of guys he knows from the past. The receiver room has been decimated. Their leading receiver, Elijah Spencer, transferred to Minnesota. Grant DeBose, the second leading receiver, was drafted by the Packers. We'll be seeing him in the NFC North this year. Third leading receiver, Victor Tucker, ran out of eligibility. And fourth leading receiver, the tight end Taylor Thompson, transferred to James Madison. They've brought in a ton of guys through the portal. Jaden Bradley from Pittsburgh, Ike White from Minnesota, Andrew Jacobs from South Dakota, and Randy Fields, great name, from Tennessee Martin. But they are all project guys who have seen little real playing time. The O-line similarly in flux. Their emerging left tackle Jordan Brown left for Georgia Tech. Their centre Ashton Gist, the highest graded offensive lineman on the team, ran out of eligibility. The right tackle Matt Rosso is in the portal. He's not listed on the roster. The guards are good. Panda Askew and Johnny King. But around them, it's completely new. Kevin Williams comes in from Nebraska. He was a 3-year starting center for Northern Colorado previously, so does have a lot of starting experience. Didn't work for him at Nebraska. Starting center Tyler Thomas comes in from Grambling State. He gave up 0 sacks or quarterback hits on over 300 pass blocking snaps last year. And there's a whole host of other transfers coming in as well. So the offense is really in flux this year. The defense has been dynamited, and rightly so, because, like I said, historically bad last year. The new DC is Ryan Osborne. He worked with Poggi at Michigan as a defensive analyst. He was with the Ravens in the NFL as a defensive assistant before getting the job as well. And the Michigan influence can be seen here. They've raided the portal for former Wolverines players. So the D-line's going to be fronted now by Iyabi Oki. He had 4 sacks as a Wolverine last year, but he does have a horrendous 40% missed tackle rate, and that's 40, which needs to be sorted. His teammate Julius Welshoff has also come from Michigan. He's got 270 snaps of experience there. They've brought in Emmanuel Balogan, the edge from Marshall. He has experience. They've brought in Demon Clowney from Ole Miss. Osita Dinma Ekwonu, he is the twin brother of Ikeem, the North Carolina State tackle who I loved in the draft the other year. They're both former 3-star recruits looking to get their college career going. They've got 3 more guys out of the Big Ten as well, so they have absolutely stacked the D-line, looking for guys to try and provide a pass rush for them. Prince Burner, he's the team's leader in the linebacker room. He was the best player on the team from the 2022 group. And they got a big get here. Another former Michigan Wolverine, Nikai Hill-Green. He was an emerging talent in Michigan's linebacker group, but injury robbed him of his 2022 season. But he's got the potential to be one of the team's best players in no time at all. So that linebacker unit could be good. Secondary has a few returning players of note, but it needs completely revamping. The pass efficiency rating for this team last year, 173.3. Now, for context, there are only 2 other teams in the entire FBS that registered above 160. None of them above 165. So they were absolutely god-awful against the pass. Wayne Jones is a gem at safety, but it's another group of transfers coming in around there. You've got CJ Burton coming from Boston College. He's got 210 snaps in the Power 5. You've got Dante Balfour from UNC. And then you've got a few other JUCO guys in there as well. I think this is a year where 37 new guys coming in, Ryan, losing most of what was your best players before. This is a throwaway year, really. You're trying to find as many pieces as you can for the future. They got some good gets from Michigan, but this might not be pretty year one for Poggi.
No, he's rebuilding an entire squad. It's not going to gel straight away. I get, like, say, why they've gone to the portal and brought in a lot of experienced guys that want playing time, and they've come here knowing that they can get as much playing time as they want, but they will have to deliver. They can't just start because they've got big names or they were committed to big schools. But yeah, it could be a rough year, but I don't think anyone would expect any less or any different. And I think they're probably pretty level-headed and got very limited expectations of what such a brand new squad will be able to achieve. So, yeah, they might find some downs and rough year. It could be bad this year. It could be surprising in some spots. You could see drastic improvement in some areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa asks, "Where's Hank gone?" I'm assuming he's gone for a walk somewhere. He likes to go around, doesn't he? So.
He's just over there, he's asleep.
Bless him.
He's napping on sofa.
Oh, he might be back later. He'll be having his nap first. Right, so the schedule. Schedule is not pretty. They don't play week 0. The out-of-conference schedule, they're at home to South Carolina State, then they're away at Maryland, at home to Georgia State, and away at Florida. Then the conference starts, and this is rough. They're away at SMU, then they have a bye, but then they're at home to Navy, they're away to East Carolina, they're at home to Florida Atlantic, they're away at Tulsa, then they got Memphis and Rice at home, and then they end at USF. That's just a rough schedule. I don't see them winning more than 2 games there, potentially. That's just a rough start in life for the American for them.
Yeah, they've challenged themselves out of conference, and then they're in conference. Yeah, they're playing a lot of the teams that are already established, and some of the bigger teams that have moved. So it's going to be a trial by fire. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe 2, possibly 3, depending. But yeah, it's going to be a tough schedule for them there. The player to watch, I mentioned him, the linebacker Prince Beamar. He's 6'2", 225 pounds. He's a run-stopping specialist who loves to come up and blitz in his spare time. It was his first year as a starter last year, but on a team with little help around him, he had a really good first season. He had 66 total tackles, 37 run stops. He had a forced fumble, a pair of sacks, a pair of quarterback hits. He showed his ability to come up and make plays in the backfield. And with Hill Green coming in alongside him, it should open things up a bit more for him to come and expand his repertoire of assignments. So Prince Beamar, he is the guy to watch on that Charlotte team. Right, let's move straight on and to a very frustrating team last season. Had the potential to be really good, didn't quite hit their ceiling. The East Carolina Pirates, established 1932. They play at the Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium. The 2021 season, they went 7-5. They were 5-3 in the ACC. 2022, the record got better. It was 8-5, but the conference record got worse. They went 4-4 in the American last season. They have rivalries with Marshall, a very heated in-state rivalry with North Carolina State as well. It has been suspended in the past because emotions got so high on that one. They play for the Victory Barrel, which is literally a wooden cask barrel affixed with all the coloured plates and everything. It's quite a cool trophy there. The coach, Mike Houston, like him, 5th season, he's 51. He's worked his way from the bottom. Started as a DC with several teams, had big success with Lenoir Rhine in 2010. He had the 4th ranked nation fourth ranked run defense in the nation in the FCS. Got promoted to head coach there in 2011. Shared a conference title in his first season. Second season, he got them to the FCS playoffs, secured the first playoff win in 50 years. And then he got them to their first ever national championship game the year after that, although they did lose it. But, it was massively overachieving. He got several Coach of the Year in the FCS awards. Went to be head coach at the Citadel, got them their first conference championship since 1992, and first playoff appearance in 23 years. Again, Coach of the Year with another team. Then he went to James Madison, the FCS heavyweights. His first season, he brought home an FCS championship, so he won it at the first time of asking. And over his 3 years there, he made a second championship game, although he lost that one. But he made the playoffs every year. And then on the back of that, he got his break with East Carolina in the FBS. He took on a team that had just gone 1-7 in conference. Started with a couple of losing seasons in himself before the 2021 campaign. They turned a corner. They went plus 500 in both overall record and conference record. Like I said, the record slipped last year, but the 8-5 represents the Pirates' best season since 2014. So progress has been continually upward, if not so in conference. And they got a big bowl win as well. And now with sort of several of the teams, the conference's best teams, gone to the big, these are one of the teams where expectations are going to be higher, and they're going to want to fill that void at the top. But he's going to be dealing with a huge amount of loss on the team this year. It is a rebuilding year, whether he likes it or not, really. But East Carolina, Ryan, they were fun to watch last year. It's had some really great players on there, and Mike Houston has, like I said, gradually had them on the incline. He's always doing better, year by year, bit by bit. Now's his chance to really go and make a statement.
Yeah, this is going to be a year they're going to fall off a cliff, because they've just lost one of the greatest quarterbacks in AAC history. And I actually watched him last night.
Yeah,
he had a good run. Like one of the older quarterbacks, but a potential, like say, QB3 in the NFL, and also lost an absolute star offensive player last year. So yeah, ECU. I don't have many neutral teams that I actually like, but the Pirates, the last few years, have produced lots of NFL caliber talent, and they've sent some big names to the league, and they're fun to watch. This year, though, we're going to see how they do when they lose such a pivotal pieces to the franchise, how they do go about replacing them.
Yeah, so that's the thing, isn't it? So first time around, he has made a really good team, and he sort of got that year where he got all his seniors in one go, which is what you want, and that's when you make your push. And they've done well, but now it's, can you do it a second time? It's what makes you a top college football coach, is you've got to keep doing it, because you lose so often. So let's look at the 2022 team, but first I just need to check if it's snowing outside in August, because me and Brent have agreed on something. Brent also thinks that Charlotte are going to have a rough schedule this year. That is a rare agreement with us both. Appreciate that one there, Brent. Grandize is in the building. Hope you are doing well. We've talked about the Pac-12 Grand, but if you want to go back and see it when the show's done, please do. We did talk quite a lot about it. Arizona State has gone. They're going to the Big 12. It's been made official, so yeah, they're gone in 2024 there. So the ECU team in 2022, the wins at home against Old Dominion and Campbell, away at South Florida, at home to Memphis and UCF, which is a Power 5 scalp, at BYU, another big scalp, at Temple, and they beat Coastal Carolina in the bowl game. The losses came at home to North Carolina State, and I remember that one clearly because they had a field goal as time expired to win that game, and they missed it, and I breathed the biggest sigh of relief in the world ever. They lost at home to Navy, then they lost away at Tulane, away at Cincinnati, and at home to Houston, so they lost all the better teams in the conference. Total offense was 23rd in the nation, 460 plus yards per game. The total defense was 88th, 404 yards per game. The scoring offense, it was 35th in the nation. It was healthy, 32.5 points per game. Scoring defense was a bit better than the total. They were 73rd. They just gave up 27 points per game. Rushing offense was 54th. Rushing defense was 19th. It was elite, 112 yards per game, just 15 touchdowns, just 3.44 yards per carry. The passing offense was 16th in the nation with Holton Ahlers, nearly 300 yards per game and 28 touchdowns. Passing defense, though, ooh boy, it was nasty. 129th in the nation. They gave up 291 yards per game through the air. In team sacks, they were 59th with 29, and team tackles for loss, they were 60th with 77, so middle of the pack there. But sacks allowed, they were 27th. They only gave up 17 sacks all season, and tackles for loss allowed, they were 53rd. They gave up just 69. And in turnover margin, they were 4th in the nation. They gained 20 turnovers. They only lost the ball 7 times all season, indicative of a team that's got a lot of experienced seniors in there, Ryan. I mean, again, it was offense kind of let down a little bit by defense, but overall, it was a decent team they had last year.
Yeah, it was well constructed. It had some big flashy playmakers. It had a lot of experience, especially on both sides of the ball, the trenches, the QB. And it was a kind of a team built to, on its day, potentially upset anyone. They had that kind of capability about them. You always felt like they could have caused an upset. So, yeah, they're losing a lot, and it feels like it's going to be hard. You're going to feel the impact of it very quickly. So you'll think that they'll bounce back because they're a well-run team, but in the short term, yeah, they're gonna suffer for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be tough. And so let's look at the 2023 season. The new quarterback, Mason Garcia, he's a big lad. He is 6'5", he's taller than me, 242 pounds. Been waiting very patiently for this starting gig. He's in his 4th year with the Pirates. He has been Holton Ahlers' understudy for a long time. The pair are best friends. Schematically, Garcia knows exactly how Houston wants his offense running, but it's another thing to go out there and execute it as a first-time true starter. Can he do that? I will say, the dude has an absolute cannon for an arm. He is one of those who can hit the 50, 60, 70-yard throws and make them look easy. Will they look to hit defenses a bit more deep over the top regularly? Who knows? But he does need to work on being more consistent at the first 2 levels. I mean, Ahlers is a massive loss, regardless, Ryan. I mean, this is... Whoever came in was pretty much going to be a downgrade unless you picked up like a Power 5 starter, which you just wouldn't do. So it's going to be interesting to see how the understudy does. I mean, sometimes apprentice can't be the master, but sometimes having a guy who knows the system inside out helps better than having a transfer in.
Yeah, some QBs are just willing to wait their turn, and that can turn into 3-4 years, which it has this time. Like, he's waited a long time, and he's used a lot of eligibility, and he's going to be very eager to impress. Following one of like a QB that's passed for 15, 16, 17,000 yards in nearly 5 years, one of the greatest all-time leaders. Those are big old shoes to fill, and it won't be easy. So he's probably going to try too hard at times, I feel. It won't be for lack of effort. I feel like he'll feel like he has to hit the ground running quickly and try and make big-time throws and force some balls in. So you're going to see a lot of good, but you can also see probably a bit of bad too. But yeah, that'll be over-eagerness, I reckon.
Yeah, Brent goes 7 turnovers. Sounds like great coaching on the fundamentals. Yeah, it's what you get when you get a load of seniors who are experienced and are good at not turning the ball over. They know their drills, they know their assignments, and it's the experience that does it. So yeah, it was great in terms of not handing the ball over this year. The season preview in general. So Houston has spent his first 4 years developing the 2022 team to be full of seniors at the top of the game. He has enjoyed good success with them, but this is his first big rebuild job with the Pirates since he took over. They are number 132 in returning production this season, so there's only one team bringing back less than what they are. It's less than 35% of last year's production coming back. So how much progress can you make in year one replacing that? The offensive coordinator is Donnie Kirkpatrick. He has been at ECU a long time. He's in his 5th year as OC. He's been there every year that Houston has. His offenses are always good, but they rank 131 in returning production. They get a measly 22% not back on offense this year. He's lost long-term starting quarterback Holton Ahlers. Now they're going to be starting the rookie, although he does know the scheme, which will help. The running back, it lost its star room, Keaton Mitchell, one of the big guys last year in the draft, sort of outside the major guys. He had 1,704 yards from scrimmage last season and 15 touchdowns. He is gone. There will be a three-way rotation this year. Marlon Gunn, who was the second leading rusher last year, he had 344 yards at 5 yards per carry. Rajay Harris, he had 5 touchdowns last year before an ACL injury, but he's healthy again. There's a lot of chatter around him. And Georgia Southern transfer Gerald Green, he had 463 yards last year, including a 130-yard game against Nebraska, who are a Power 5 team. So he brings experience into the book. So there's going to be 3 good guys in the running back room. Both the 1,000-yard receivers are gone, Isaiah Winstead and CJ Johnson, so they need new guys to step up. They had Jalen Johnson, who had 4 touchdown catches last year. Shane Calhoun is an emerging tight end with good receiving skills, but outside of that, it's down to transfers who are dropping down from the Power 5 looking for opportunity. So you've got Keelan Robinson from Kansas, Chase Sowell from Colorado, and Ryan King from Georgia Tech. The offensive line has not escaped either. So 3-year starting centre Avery Jones has transferred to Auburn. 3-year starting left guard Nishad Strother has transferred to Oregon. Starting left tackle Justin Redd and starting right tackle Noah Henderson ran out of eligibility, so that's literally 4 of the 5 starters gone. Akron is the source of the reinforcements, so they got 6'6" right tackle Owen Murphy from Akron. He has a 1.5 year starting experience for the Zips, but he missed last year because the new coach didn't like him, so he sat out. They also brought in the guard Ryan Beckman from Akron as well. After that, you're kind of looking at in-house guys. They've got a 6'7" centre named Hampton Ergel. He's going to be stepping in there, but it's all change in the entirety of the offense, especially on the offensive line. The defense is 109th in returning production. Just 47% of it is back. However, D-line is in pretty good shape for them. DeAnta Johnson anchors the line on the interior. He's the nose tackle. Chad Stevens and Jeremy Lewis, both very experienced starters on the edge. They just need to raise the sack count a little. And then you've just got to sort out the depth around them guys. The linebacker room is starting completely from scratch. They've lost all their starters there. But they've brought in some good guys from the portal. You've got in Raniera Dilworth from UNC. He's had rotational snaps with them. And then you've got vastly experienced South Carolina State starter BJ Davis. He is making the jump up from the FCS. He had 2,200 snaps for South Carolina State. Secondary, very poor last year, but some good players in there. They did lose their top cornerback Malik Fleming to Houston. Their top safety Gerard Wilson left for UCF. And hybrid defensive back Juan Powell has gone to Coastal Carolina. And another one of the corners, Demel Kickman, has gone to Georgia Southern. And their hybrid linebacker safety, Gerard Stringer, who was second on the team in tackles, ran out of eligibility, so the secondary's been hit hard. Julius Wood at safety is the man they'll build around. He led the team in tackles, he had 3 forced fumbles, loves to get up and lay hits on people. They've got in more help from UNC, Dontavius Nash and Tymir Brown, both cornerbacks coming out to try and find some starters there, but it's complete unknown at corner. There's going to be a ton of new faces in this team this year, right? They've lost everybody. This is a tear down and a rebuild this year.
Yeah, and it's going to start with you don't just find back-to-back 1,700 yard rushers from scrimmage. It's going to come with a committee of guys that get 600-700 yard each, and they're going to have to protect the quarterback that, like I say, is basically a rookie. Even after all these years of learning, his full solid season as a starter, he's going to have to rely very heavily on his run game to try open up some space. Cause let's say he lost his 2 top receivers as well, so it's going to have to be a pretty heavy run first offense to open up the pass. He's going to need a little bit of help in that department.
Yeah, and you lose Keaton Mitchell as well. That just doesn't help. He was such a good running back for them. It's like, you can't replace all these guys in one go, can you, when you lose so many pivotal pieces?
No, you just can't pick that many up. Not in the portal. Not of how the portal works these days.
No, absolutely not. So, hang on, I got a few questions here. So, Nine Drinks says, Ant-Man, do you know what radio station Micro Mike is going to be on at 4:30? I saw that earlier. He's on The Huge Show. I don't know what wavelength it is over there, but he's on The Huge Show. So if you know where that is, then just go and find him there. Double duty today. Brian Shook says, yep, triple duty today. We're doing lots of content today, so it's all good fun. So the schedule for this year, they don't play week 0. First game is away at Michigan, always a good one to start with. Then they're at home to Marshall, away at Appalachian State. Then they play Gardner-Webb at home. Then the conference starts. They're away at Rice, then they get a bye. Then you're at home to SMU and Charlotte. You're away at UTSA, at home to Tulane, away at Florida Atlantic and Navy, and then you finish up at home to Tulsa. Again, rough schedule.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those where try win your home games, see how you do on the road, maybe try cause an out-of-conference upset. 6-7 wins would be very respectable when you've lost the two main focal factors on an offense. So, yeah, I can see anywhere between 4 and 6-7 wins, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it. The bowl game is possible, but they've got to land on a lot of pieces very quickly. It is a tough schedule there for them. I think more 4 to 5 wins probably. The player to watch to finish this off, the linebacker, BJ Davis, 6'2", 210 pounds, a fantastic coverage linebacker. He is coming off a career season looking to make his mark at the next level. I went and watched this dude's highlights. He is electric. He had 105 total tackles last season, 46 run stops, 2 forced fumbles. He had 15 quarterback pressures, including 3 sacks and 3 quarterback hits, as he can show a skill to blitz when required. But it's the coverage where his numbers really pop out. So he gave up 21 receptions on 36 targets. That's sub 60% completion, which for a linebacker is good. But get this, he had 5 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, and 3 battered passes. He had a ton of production in the passing game, and coverage linebackers do not grow on trees. So can he do it at the next level? He's lightning quick, but he hits like a freight train. He did have a little bit of a tackling issue that he needs to work on, but outside of that, he's fast progressing as a do-it-all linebacker. He's going to make big waves in the American this year, so keep an eye out for BJ Davis, the linebacker at East Carolina. Right, let's move it on. Next up, we are going to be talking about the Florida Atlantic Owls, one of the newer teams around, established 2001. They play at FAU Stadium. Great naming there. The 21 season, they were 5-7. They were 3-5 in the CUSA. 2022, they were 5-7. Although they made a slight jump in the CUSA, they went 4-4. But it was not enough to keep Willie Taggart in a job, and his ass got fired. The rivalry is with Florida International. It's called the Shula Bowl, named after Don Shula himself. And they've got a new head coach this year, and Ryan, these might be the dark horses this year. Tom Herman, it's his first season, he's 48, he's the Mensa man, he's actually a part of Mensa, and he's an offensive guru. He started at Sam Houston as a wide receiver coach in 2001, had 3 years there before spending a cumulative total of 9 years as OC and QB coach at Texas State, Rice, Iowa and Ohio State, and he broke records and created high quality offenses on all of those teams. He's no stranger to the American, got his first head coach gig with Houston in 2015, had immediate success with them year 1, led them to an 11-1 season. They won the Western Division title back when they had divisions, and then he went 2 better. They beat Temple to win the American outright, and then they beat Florida State in the Peach Bowl to record their first bowl win over a top 10 Associated Press ranked team since 1979. The 13-1 record saw them ranked 8th nationally. It was their highest ranking also since 1979. He had 2 Power 5 scalps over Oklahoma and Louisville in year 2. Both of them were respectively ranked number 3 in the nation at the time, although the record slipped a little bit. And on the back of this, he got his big job at Texas. They came calling. He registered 4 consecutive winning seasons, 4 consecutive bowl wins, but the lack of a Big 12 title cost him his job in 2020. He will be looking to get his head coach career back on track at Florida Atlantic, and this team, it's not as bad as it looks. So the post-game win expectancy last year, that's when you take all the stats and things into account to determine the outcome of a game. That said, they should have been a 7-5 team, not the 5-7 they ended up with, and they're returning a lot of the roster that underachieved. They've got the 4th highest graded roster in the American this season, like in pre-season strength judgment. Can Tom Herman unlock it? This could be the one, right? This could be the one where a team really shoots up and becomes one of the G5's top guys.
Yeah, and we've seen in the past, was it Lane Kiffin that came here and had a...
I don't think...
Not FAU.
It might have been Lane. Hang on. I will have to go back and check that, but...
I thought he came here and won a conference title and then got a big job. It might have been FAU. I think someone's used this before as a...
yeah, it was Lane Kiffin.
He made them one of the best teams in the nation, yeah. So they've got a habit of attracting high-profile head coaches. Like, say, Tom Herman has done things the hard way. He got his dream job at Texas, who he did pretty well at, but he struggled in the conference. Never got into title, but yeah, a decent built roster, and they're getting a really experienced head coach. So these could be the team to watch. This could be a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah, like I say, underachieving team, head coach, really good. So we'll see. Let's have a look at this team. And just before I do, Nine Tricks, it's not schedule, it's schedule. And it will always be schedule on this show. And it always has been schedule. So we're going to do that. Thank you to everyone who's in the building, by the way. Hope you are all well. If you have any questions to ask as we're going through these, just let me know. So the 2022 season, the wins came at home to Charlotte, Southeastern Louisiana, Rice, UAB, and away at FIU. The losses, so they lost away at Ohio, versus UCF, at Purdue, at North Texas, at UTEP, at Middle Tennessee, and versus Western Kentucky. But just to put it in context, Ohio they lost by 3 points, Purdue they lost by 2, UTEP they lost by 3, Western Kentucky they lost by 1. So that was 4 games decided by a field goal or less. So, you know, for a 5-7 team, they could have easily been a 9-win team. The 2022 stats, the offense total was 47th, 411 yards per game, but the defense was 107th. They gave up 424 yards per game. Scoring defense was 56th. They had 30 points per game, or just a tiny bit under, but as good as. The scoring defense actually though was 64th, so 43 spots higher than the total. They actually only gave up 26 points per game, so a lot of yards given up, but not necessarily so many points. The rushing offense was 38th in the nation. The rushing defense was 103rd, so not good. The passing offense was 72nd. The passing defense was 96th. In sacks, they were 114th. They only had 18 sacks all year, and they were 107th in tackles for loss. They only had 58. But in sacks allowed, they were 19th. They only gave up 14 on the season, and tackles for loss allowed, they were 27th. They only gave up 54 on the season. And turnover margin, also pretty good. They were 19th. They gained 21 turnovers. They lost 13. So, I mean, you start fixing that defense up a little bit, and you know you've got the balance of a really good team there, sort of right away. A lot of it's coming back.
Yeah, offensively, they're currently right there. With defensively lacking a bit behind, but no glaring issues. And offensive line, good play, like you say, good protection, keeping those numbers down. So, yeah, there's a spine here. There's a bit of a plan already in place that is there to be followed, but there's a blueprint. So, yeah, maybe just an injection of talent needed, a bit better coaching, and yeah, they could be a team to watch to potentially cause an upset.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's have a look ahead to the 2023 season. So, the quarterback. Last season's starter in Kosi Perry ran out of eligibility. This is going to be an interesting one, right? Casey Thompson, he's back again. Probably the starter here I've got. 6'1", 200 pounds. He's been a starter in the Power 5 for the last 2 seasons. First with Texas, then last year with Nebraska. Obviously, he's had a year with Herman already. He threw for 2,407 yards with 17 touchdowns and 10 interceptions with the Cornhuskers. He had 5 rushing touchdowns as well, although he's never been much of a runner. Like I say, they know each other from working together at Texas. It is somewhat of a coup for Herman. He's not been playing anywhere near bad enough to make a drop from the P5 to the G5. It's not been great, but he instantly maybe becomes one of the best quarterbacks in the American. However, before they managed to get his commitment, they'd already bought in former Central Michigan starter Daniel Richardson, who has over 5,000 passing yards for the Chippewas, and he has been coached by the new offensive coordinator at Florida Atlantic. So maybe it's not so cut and dry who the starter is, but you've got 2 starters here, right? One's worked with the head coach, one's worked with the offensive coordinator. I mean, you've seen Casey Thompson play in Ireland last year. He's not been great, but he's not been bad enough to warrant a move down. This is a big coup for them if he ends up in the starter.
Casey Thompson's a good quarterback. He's just been on bad teams. Like Nebraska, they were bad. And I feel like this could be the level he actually shines on. But it is weird for an offensive coordinator and a head coach to both bring in their own quarterback. That sounds like a recipe for fallout. I get it's a good problem to have 2 legitimate starting quarterbacks, and they're going to battle it out, and the best man will win the job. There'll be, I'm guessing, no levels of favoritism, and they're happy to work with either. So there's a lot worse problems to have. Like I say, you've got 2 experienced guys that have got a good amount of production under their belts.
Yeah, exactly. So, other teams will have a lot worse problems out of this. I think the thing is they got Richardson first, not realising Casey was available, and then Casey's like, yes. But the fact that Richardson's not gone back in the portal straight away makes me think that there is a competition there, but we'll see. They'll get a good starter. So the preview for the team in general, are FAU as talented as it is speculated they are? Have they just been coached badly these last few years by Willie Taggart? Odds are that could be a good yes. But if that's a yes to both, then you've got your dark horse for the division right here. But if not, they could fade into obscurity at the bottom of the American quickly. So on offense, the new OC is Charlie Fry. He was the OC at Central Michigan in 2019 to 2020, hence why he knows Richardson, the quarterback there. Then he went to the NFL. He's been quarterbacks coach with the Miami Dolphins, so he's been coaching 2 of these last few years. Like I say, whoever they pick to replace departed starter than Kosi Perry, they're getting a skilled veteran with plenty of college snaps to the name. Bodes really well for the succession. The running back room is loaded. So starter Larry McCammon is back. He had a 1,000-yard season last year. The running back 2, Zuberi Mobley, is back. He had 540 yards of his own last year. They've also brought in Kobe Lewis from Purdue. So for those who know him a few years ago, he was prolific at Central Michigan, but injuries have killed his college career over the last few years. But he's meant to be fully healthy now, and if they get him back to form, they've got 3 legitimate running back 1 threats there. So the room is stacked. The top receiver, LaJohntay Wester, is back. He had over 800 yards last year. They did lose wide receiver 2 Jamal Ladrine to Purdue, but all the rest of last year's depth is back. They've hit the portal to really bolster the tight end room. They got in former 4-star recruit Elijah Brown from Alabama. They got high 3-star recruit Khalil Bradley coming from the Miami Hurricanes. They've got Jackson Sumlin coming in from Oklahoma as well. So they got a good bunch of tight ends who are looking to prove themselves. The offensive line that was really good last year, it's returning over 60% of last year's snaps. They're going to build around the guys on there. They've got a 6'8" right tackle by the name of Chaz Neal, huge. but they'll be building around guys like him. And they also got the tackle Woody Jean in from Arizona. He'll pick up some of the slack from the production that they have lost, but overall figures to be a really great offensive line again. The defense needs to improve to threaten the championship this year, though. However, they've gone back to the well for this one. So the new DC is Rock Bellantoni, and he was one of their most successful defensive coordinators of the 2010s. This is the guy who developed a guy by the name of Trey Hendrickson. Don't know if you've heard of him. Pretty big in the NFL right now. But he developed him for the Florida Atlantic Owls. That's where Trey comes from, and he laid the groundwork for the defense that dominated 2017 and 2018. He recruited at a very high level. The defense, it's number one in the country in returning production. Over 82% of it is back. So wasn't necessarily all good, but he gets a highly experienced group of players. If you can sprinkle some portal magic into that, hopefully you make a much better unit as soon as year one. At the heart of the defensive line at tackle, you've got Evan Anderson and Latrell Jean. And then you've got a new playmate arriving for them. So Jude Okolo, he is coming from Illinois State. He is also making the jump up from the FCS. He's coming off the back of a 90-plus graded season. He is an elite run defender, something Florida Atlantic really struggled with last year. But the biggest problem they've got outside of that, they need to find pass rushers to complement them. They've got a couple in-house. Chris Jones is the main one there. They've brought in Richard Thomas from Indiana. He's dropped down out the Power 5, looking to see the field for the first time. But it is very much a hope someone breaks out group right now. The edge rush is the big problem here for them. Eddie Williams, he's the linebacker in general. Hits hard, takes no prisoners. He's had a few injury issues, but if he stays healthy, he's the leader on that defense there. You've got Jalen Wester and Courtney McBride, they're linebackers 2 and 3. They can play both on and off ball. All three of them are highly experienced in this system, and they've brought in some really good transfers to back them up. They've brought in Jackson Ambush from Albany. He's been starting there for the last 2 years. You've got Desmond Tisdall coming in from Auburn. You've got Zaire Horton coming from Georgia Southern. That linebacker room is stacked with starting talent and depth. Secondary, there's a good bunch of talented players back there, but because they didn't get no pass rush, they got picked on a little bit. They only lost one of the main guys. They lost Tasia Young to Ole Miss, the safety. He's going to do really well at Ole Miss, I reckon. Cornerback room is stacked. Roman Mungin, he's the high-level incumbent there. They got a big get in the transfer portal. They got in Jaron Morris from Texas State. He is a 4-year starting cornerback for Texas State. His best season in college last year, had an 81 grade. Another elite run defender. The Owls have really worked hard to address that issue, and those two are going to lead a really deep room at corner. They've got really good safety in Amani Eli Adams. They've brought in Jalen Huff from Georgia Tech in the portal. He's got Power 5 snaps to his name. The depth is a little lighter, but if Huff hits, they're just going to be absolutely fine. I mean, this Ryan, it could low-key be one of the best teams in the G5 this season. They've got the main parts, they just need to flesh out some depth here and there.
Yeah, and they've gone and got a guy, Tom Herman, that's got some pull. Like I say, being a ex-Texas guy, being a pretty well household name in the Power 5, they've attracted some good talent from bigger schools to come down and play for them. And also, it does help when a lot of teams look at what Lane Kiffin was able to achieve when he brought in Power 5 talent to FAU, and he literally walked to a title, like I say, and then he moved on. It shows it can be done, and that team, the school, knows how to win when it's got the right level of talent, the right guys come in. So yeah, these definitely could be one of the teams to watch, and one of the better, more balanced teams from the group of 5. I feel like Tom Herman could really not make a name for himself because he's done that, but he might put his name back in the shop window potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these could be one of the teams who threaten the G5 spot in the top bowl games. You know, that is potentially the ceiling maybe for this team there. Just a few comments to go through. Grandizer, yes, we are live streaming our reaction to the game later, so you can come in and chat with us if you want to there. Brent goes, it's a good problem to have at the quarterback position. It's a great problem to have at the quarterback position. They've got two really good guys there. Nine Drink says, my son is a senior this year, probably going to Florida Atlantic. No communication yet, though. Hope he gets in there 9 drinks. Hope he's able to get that sorted. So good luck to him with that. Right, so the schedule. They don't play week 0. They start at home to Monmouth and at home to Ohio. Then you're away to Clemson and away to Illinois, which is rough. Then you get your bye. Then you start your conference games. At home to Tulsa, away to USF, at home to UTSA, away at Charlotte, away at UAB. Then you're at home to East Carolina and Tulane, and you're away at Rice. And I mean, that schedule sets out perfectly. Take the non-cons out, because that's rough, but you've got the best teams at home, UTSA, East Carolina, Tulane, and then you've got the weaker teams, Charlotte, UAB, Rice. I don't really want to upset David Reinfeldt, but if you wanted a schedule for a team that's maybe ready to compete, that's the one you'd spoon feed them.
Yeah, you've got 2, not gimmies, but you've got 2 nice warmer backs. I know Ohio got a good quarterback, but I'd like to think they could handle and be 2-0. And then, like you say, out of conference schedule, yeah, Clemson, with K Klubnik coming in, that might be difficult. Illinois, it'll have to depend which Fighting Illini actually turn up on the day. It could actually make life pretty difficult for them. And then, then the real hard work begins. I'd expect them to do really well at home and try win all their home games, and then see what they can do on the road. So the schedule of all of them we've spoken about so far is the best. I can see the most wins of any team we've spoken about so far, easily.
Oh, absolutely. And I say, even the Clemson and Illinois games, it sharpens your team up. It's top quality opposition. So, and then you got a bye to rest, beat up, get any beat up bodies, get them back in shape, and you're good to go. This team, I think, they're one of my favourites this year, I reckon, in terms of the Americans. So it's looking good for them. The player to watch, I mentioned him already, gone for some of the FCS guys today, but Judah Colo, the new DT, he's 6'4", 290 pounds. Florida Atlantic, they had a real problem stopping the run last season, but we all know that can change if you've got a DT who can come in and dominate. And this guy, he's the plucky underdog from the FCS. He could be a huge part of this defense really quick just for that reason. He has not missed a single tackle in the last 2 seasons. He shows great technique, which is a big asset in the run game. It's why he's so good. Not a single missed tackle in 2 seasons. That is great. There's some pass rush work to work out, but, he had 14 pressures last year. There were only 4 quarterback hits. There were no sacks, so it's kind of part of his game that needs developing. It's kind of a bit like Broderick in a way. He's a guy who's going to come in and absolutely stamp his authority on the run game straight away, and then he's going to need to develop his pass rush going later on. But if he comes in and stops that team bleeding against the run, you're going to hear his name very quickly. So Judah Colo, the DT from excuse me, the Florida Atlantic Owls. Grandizer, I've got 4 teams left, so it's probably going to be another 30 minutes or so, 30, 40 minutes. That's how long the stream will be on, so I don't know if you want to go to the shop or not. It's up to you. But we'll be back about midnight for the other stream. Right, up next, the Memphis Tigers. Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium is their home. In 2021, they went 6-6. They were 3-5 in the AAC. In 2022, the record was 7-6. They were 3-5 in the AAC. The only difference was they played a bowl game last year because the one the year before got cancelled due to COVID. The rivalries with Arkansas State, the Paint Bucket Bowl, Cincinnati, Louisville, Ole Miss, the Mid-South rivalry, and Southern Miss as well. And we're reaching our first guy today who might be sitting on a hot seat. Ryan Silverfield, this is his 4th season, 43 years old. He is an offensively minded coach. He has a mixture of college and NFL experience in the big leagues. He was an offensive quality control coach, as well as coaching both trench units with the Minnesota Vikings. He was an offensive line coach with the Detroit Lions, for those of you who remember him. I think that was in 2015. And he's also been at Arizona State, Toledo, and UCF in various capacities in college. Mike Norvell brought him to Memphis in 2016 as O-line coach. 2 years later, he was run game coordinator as well. 2019, he became the assistant head coach. And then when Norvell left to go and wreck Florida State, Silverfield got the job, first as interim head coach, then permanent head coach. First year, they went 8-3 and 5-3 in conference. They took a small step back in year 2. They went 6-6. They were 3-5 in conference. Year 3, nothing changed apart from a blowout bowl win, improving their record from 6-6 to 7-6. But again, they went 3-5 in conference. He's 21-16 overall. He's 11-13 in conference. Now, I remember us last year speculating that another sub 500 conference campaign might be the end for him, but Memphis have stuck with him. But the conference's best teams are gone now, and a whole host of CUSA teams are replacing them. It really feels, Ryan, this is the year where he has to get significant wins in conference, or he's a goner, because for a team like Memphis, 3-5 records are just not acceptable.
Yeah, it's now or never. It's do or die. Like they previously had a great Brady White. Like, he was one of their best quarterbacks. Like, their history, he was really, really good, and he led them to some. Well, he put up a lot of stats, but he said didn't always amount to wins. But now they need to prove that they're the best of the rest, the best of the teams that have stuck around, and they can't afford to be pushed around by the new kids on the block. Otherwise, like I say, he'll be collecting his P45 pretty quickly. They've struggled in conference. They've had a big overturn of conference teams. That can't continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is... Debt fans man saying Toledo. I say Toledo all the time. I don't know why I said Toledo. I think you Americans, some of you say Toledo as well, so you're going to confuse me. I'll keep saying Toledo. Sorry, Debt fan man. So the 2022 record, the wins were at Navy versus Arkansas State versus North Texas, at home to Temple, Tulsa, North Alabama, and then Utah State, the bowl game. So they were another team that won all their home games pretty much. The losses, though, away at Mississippi State, at home to Houston, away at East Carolina, away at Tulane, away at SMU, at home to UCF. And one thing I noted here, the lowest score they gave up in defeats was 33. So they conceded 33 points or more in every game they lost, which goes some way to explaining why they lost games last year. And it's kind of silly, really, because you look at the stats and they think they should have done so much better. The total offense was 39th in the nation, 421 yards. Total defense was 51st with 363 yards. So that's top 51 units on both sides of the ball. The scoring offense, 22nd in the nation, 35.5 points per game. The scoring defense was 60th. So they gave up 26 points per game. So they scored nearly 10 points per game more on average than they gave up. And then you kind of start to see maybe why those stats are a bit screw-whiffed. The rushing offense was 75th. They got 142 yards per game only. They had 30 touchdowns, which was a lot, but it's because they punched it in a lot from short yardage situations. They only averaged 3.75 yards per carry. The rushing defense was 28th. It was elite. It was 122 yards per game. The passing offense was 21st, 280 yards per game. But the passing defense was 89th in the nation. They gave up 241 yards per game. And here's where you see why they struggled. Team sacks, they were 105th in sacks. They had 21 in 13 games, which is not a lot at all. Tackles for loss, they were 105th. They gave up they only had 63. And then sacks allowed, they were 99th. They gave up 37. Tackles for loss allowed, 103rd. They were 87th. And then turnover margin, they were 24th. Gained 22, lost 16. But you look at that, and they got their ass whooped in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And that is why all those pretty little stats mean very little when you're getting whooped in the trenches, right?
Yeah, it's quite easy to see where they struggled and why they lost so many games. Lack of juice. Opponent quarterbacks just had to sit in the pocket long enough and just pick them off because no one could lay a finger on them. And it don't matter how good you are at getting yards on both sides of the ball or stopping them. If you allow a quarterback to just dictate play, yeah, it's easy to see why they conceded at least 33 points in every loss because they were going for touchdowns, not field goals. That is the biggest thing they have to address is urgency and players in the backfield, explosive players. They have to get some of them. They've got to do it quickly.
Yeah, exactly. It all runs through your trenches. You can have all the fancy stats you want, but if you don't have the trench warfare to do it, you're going to struggle, especially against the better teams, which is what they did last year. All the good teams beat them. Defan Man goes, never need to apologise, but show me an American who says Toledo and I'll guess he's Canadian. In fairness to us, Defan Man, we're Detroit fans. There's a lot of Canadians mixed in with you lot, so that's probably I could probably be forgiven for that one. So looking to 2023, the quarterback. Love this guy, Seth Hennigan, 6'3", 210 pounds. He was the freshman sensation who threw for 3,300 yards and 25 touchdowns in his freshman season in 2021. He kept his form rolling last year, had 3,597 passing yards and 22 touchdowns. So in just 2 seasons so far, he's got a smidge under 7,000 passing yards. He's thrown at 62% completion, which is pretty good. He's got 47 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, so his ratio is basically 3-1. He also got involved in the ground game this year after being a non-factor year 1. He had 484 yards and 4 scores. Did have 6 fumbles, but, he's only had 8 picks both seasons. But in 3 of last year's 5 defeats, he did toss 2 picks, so that's going to need clearing up in the big games. A lot of his picks came in the big games going into year 3, but year 3 for a freshman starter, he's one of the best QBs in the conference already, and maybe only just tapping his potential so far, Ryan. He's really damn good.
He is, and that's the problem. If they struggle again this year, he's gone. He is not going to stick around here where his talents are being wasted, where other guys are not pulling their weight when he's given. Like you say, he's playing at a Power 5 level, but the guys around him aren't at the same level. So he's only going to keep his talents in town so long.
Yeah, oh god, yeah. He's not lasting one more year if he keeps doing that. He'll be over 10,000 passing yards in 3 seasons. Hell, he could be up at nearly 11 or 12, so yeah, he could be crazy, but he's a really good quarterback, so watch out for Seth Hennigan there at Florida, at Memphis. So the season preview in general, as I've already said, 2023, it's make or break for this Memphis regime. They got one of the best QBs in conference, and the league is weaker this year. They have to capitalise, or there will be no silver lining for Silverfield. As we said, Seth Hennigan leads the offense. Tigers have a deep rotation at running back to deploy with him. They did lose Asa Martin in the transfer portal to Troy, but former Northern Illinois transfer Jay Ducker, he was the guy we told you to watch last season. He led the team in rushing last year. He's back for another go-round. Brandon Thomas, he was just starting to break out last year before an injury, but he's back and fully healthy. And they got a big coup in the transfer portal. They bought in Blake Watson from Old Dominion. He has 2,000 yards in the last 2 seasons with the Monarchs. And they also managed to get in Catravian Hargrove. He's a former 3-star prospect from Miss State. So this room is highly talented and it's very deep. Same can't be said for the receiving room though. Last year's top 4 receivers are gone. The tight end Caden Priestcorn has transferred to Arkansas. The wide receiver Eddie Lewis has transferred to South Carolina. Jaden Ivory, the wide receiver, has transferred to South Alabama. And Gabriel Rogers ran out of eligibility. They do bring back Joseph Skates. He's the deep threat. He averaged 23 yards per catch and 412 yards altogether. The rest comes from the transfer portal. So you got in Demir Blankumzi. He had 500 yards for MAC champions Toledo last year. Tauski Dove, he had 1,100 yards in 3 years at Missouri, so he's an SEC guy. Christian Carter is the new arrival from the FCS via Pittsburgh State, so they do bring some talent in to replace all that loss there. O-line's returning 64% of its snaps from last year, but it was a poor unit, so there's been a lot of portal transfers to try and sort this out. The left tackle / left guard Xavier Hill comes in from LSU. He's had rotational snaps there. Most of the others looking for their first opportunities. So they got Flip Carswell from Ole Miss, Marcus Henderson from Arkansas, RJ Adams from Georgia Tech, and Jack Greer from Ole Miss. Defensive line also needs to step up in both the run and the pass game. They've lost their big nose tackle Cameron Jackson to the Florida Gators. They're bringing in Kayvonta Spears from Louisiana Tech to try and fill that void. He was starter for them last year on the interior, so they replaced starter for starter. Ardarius Jones, he has snaps for Texas A&M, as does Josh Ellis for Oklahoma in the interior as they look to buff up the run defense. Jalen Allen, Cormonte Hamilton, good pair of edge rushers. They just need to build around him. They've bought in highly experienced edge Jalen Joyner from Florida Atlantic to bolster a room that needs more sacks. Linebacker room also needs to be rebuilt. They've got Jeffrey Cantin Arku. He's the lead guy there, but around him it's all new. They got the starting linebacker Chandler Martin from East Tennessee State. He's FCS. He's going to fight for one of the vacant spots. Davian Ross leads a really talented cornerback room. That includes transfer Simeon Blair, who was starting cornerback for Arkansas in the SEC last year. So somehow they've pulled a starting cornerback out of the SEC. Big coup for them. And they also bring in Malik Feaster. Had a lot of playing time at Jacksonville State before having a year of minor steps at Florida State. They've also got Cameron Miller transferred in from Tennessee. So the corner room actually loaded. I can't believe they got an SEC starter out of them. Safety room needs an overhaul. Portal again provided the pieces. The starting Colorado safety Tyron Taylor has arrived. So that's the second Power 5 starter they bought in, but his grading was low across the board. There was a reason Coach Prime got rid of him. Jalen Johnson's come from Ohio State and Maurice Hampton from LSU. They have not seen the field much though. So overall, there's still question marks on the trenches, which is going to be the biggest problems for them. But the pieces are there to succeed if they can get enough of them working.
Yeah, skill positions, they don't sound like an issue. Got good running backs, like I say, they've got some solid defensive backs, even got, like I say, decent linebacker in. It's going to be all on that returning production from the O-line being better, and the defensive line, the guys they bring in, someone taking the bull by the horns and having a good year rushing the passer.
Yeah, it's figures. It's nearer now. He's got no more excuse. This is year 4. He's going to have to do it somehow by hook or by crook. But they've got some very good ones. If they can get guys thrown at the secondary, they might have a lot of success there. But it all comes down to, can they stop the run? How does the schedule play out for them? They don't play week 0. They start at home to Bethune-Cookman, so they've got a HBCU battle there on their hands. Away at Arkansas State. Then they're at home to Navy. They're at home to Missouri. Oh no, they're not. They're playing it in a neutral site in St. Louis. I don't know why, but they are. Then they're at home to Boise State. Then the conference slate really gets off. They're at home to Tulane. Then they're away to UAB in North Texas. They're at home to USF. Away to Charlotte. At home to SMU. And away to Temple. So again, harder teams. Tulane, SMU at home. Charlotte, Temple, UAB on the road. The path is there for them if they want it.
Yeah, that's not a bad schedule at all. And playing a Missouri team that, well, I think everyone knows Missouri, they stink right now. Like, they're not in a good place, especially not in SEC. So something tells me that some fans will go in that game feeling a feeling of trepidation, a little bit of fear that they could be dragged into an ugly game there. So, yeah, I'd say that schedule is set up for definitely a much better in-conference year. It's got to be.
Oh, yeah. Got it. A bare minimum. If they're sort of sub 500 at halfway, he's gone. I feel like he's absolutely gone. To finish this off, the player to watch, the cornerback Davian Ross. He's 5'10", 175 pounds. So he was a 2-year starter from Eastern Kentucky. He made the jump up to Memphis last year. He's taken to the FBS like a duck to water. So he had 45 total tackles, 16 run stops, a forced fumble, an interception, 3 pass breakups. But the most impressive thing, he gave up 35 catches this year. He only allowed 60 yards of yak on 35 catches. So even when he was giving up receptions, literally nothing came after the catch. He's going to be in a highly talented room this year. The perfect opportunity for him to crown his ascension up and have a true career year. So Davian Ross, the corner there at Memphis. He is the guy to watch. Now we are down to our last couple of teams. Now, we've got 3 left, so let's get into them. So we've got the Navy Midshipmen. Up next, service team, triple option time, Rye. Play at the Memorial Stadium. They went 4-8, 3-5 in the American in 2021. They went 4-8, 4-4 in the American in 2022. And once again, new head coach. That was not enough to save Ken Niumatolo's job. He had been there 15 years, so one of the longest reigns in college football came to an end last year. The rivalries, they've got loads. Army, Air Force, Notre Dame. That game is coming over to Ireland very soon, actually. That can't be far away now.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and then we get to see Navy play football against Notre Dame. They've got a big rivalry against Maryland, the Crab Bowl Trophy. That is a class warfare rivalry, that is. And then they've also got minor rivalries with Rutgers, SMU, and Pittsburgh. Nobody likes Navy, apparently, apart from people who support Navy. The coach, Brian Newberry, first season, defensively minded head coach. It's his first role as a head coach. He's been coaching since 2000. He's a long-time defensive coordinator. He's been at Washington and Lee, Elon, Sewanee, Northern Michigan, Kennesaw State. Lot of FCS things there. He had 5 years out of things before he came to Navy in 2019. He's spent the last 4 years as Ken Niumatolo's DC. But with him getting fired last season after 15 years in charge, Newberry has been given a reins as a new era is about to emerge for Navy football. And this is an interesting team. So the team went 4-8 last year, but remember that post-game win expectancy? All the stats are put together, how they should have done in games and what the record should have been. The post-game win expectancy was 8-4. So this team massively underachieved compared to what was expected of them. So maybe he's not taking over the worst team in the world there. But, I mean, this is, brand new start for Navy now, right? The long-term head coach is gone. We've seen with Army, they're trying to transition away from the triple option. Well, they'll play the triple, but they're trying to pass it more. This could maybe be the fresh start that Navy need. I mean, Niumatolo did a terrific job, a tremendous job there up until about 3 years ago, and then it's kind of just gone south a little, and you feel like this is the refresh that they need.
Yeah. Ken, massive respect for him, what he's done, but it was time to go. It was time for fresh ideas, a new head coach, and a new direction. And yeah, he has built a very consistent, stable franchise, never flashy. It knows what it is, teams know what to expect. I think it's time to try change them. I think right now it's just been too safe the last few years. So yeah, but with change, like I say, after such 15 years, also comes risk. You don't want to try change too much or too quickly and unset the balance, and ultimately the team falls flat on its face.
Yeah, it was time. It was time, and it's going to be interesting to see what the new guy does here. Brent took great delight in this. Brent's an Army guy. The Army guy helped get the coach canned. Yes, it did. Army beat them pretty emphatically. So, yeah, Army were responsible for that. He also goes, any idea when the HBCU show will be? Davius Richardson breakdown. I've been talking to Gerald. We are going to get it sorted very soon. He's been really busy recently. He's now become a scout for the East-West Shrine Bowl. He's got some really good promotions recently. Gerald's been doing great, so it's just trying to find time for little olders. So, but it will be coming. We will get that show to you there, Brent. It's going to be good. So the team last year, the wins were away at East Carolina, at home to Tulsa and Temple, and away at UCF, who were ranked 20th in the nation at the time. So big upset over a Power 5 team there. But the losses, they lost at home to Delaware, who were FCS, at home to Memphis, away at Air Force, away at SMU, at home to Houston, away at Cincinnati, at home to Notre Dame, and at home to Army. They got swept in the Commanders-in-Chief, and that just can't happen. The stats for the team, I mean, not going to lie here, you're probably going to be able to guess these, but total offense, 111th, just 326 yards per game. Defense was 32nd in the nation. It was good. Less than 340 yards per game given up. The scoring offense was 105th. They were 21.9 points per game, so 22 points per game they got. Scoring defense was 52nd. They only gave up 24 points per game, so it wasn't bad. I know you won't have read this, right, but guess what the rushing offense and the passing offense ranks were out of 133? Just have a guess. You'll probably get near.
Well, rushing will have been about 11th. Passing will have been like 123rd.
Oh no, you were close. Rushing, they were 4th. Passing, they were 129th. So, 4th best rushing offense in the nation. It was good. 240 yards a game. But I mean, at its peak, they were running at about 380 yards per game. So even then, it's come back down. The Russian defense, 3rd in the nation. They gave up less than 89 yards per game on the ground. 7 touchdowns. They only gave up 7 rushing touchdowns all season. They gave up exactly 3 yards per carry. So the run defense, elite. Passing defense, though, was 98th. They gave up 250 yards per game. Sacks, they were 23rd with 34. Tackles for loss, they were 39th with 78. Sacks allowed, they were 10th with just 12, but that's a misnomer because they never passed the ball. And then tackles for loss allowed, they were 80th. They gave up 71. Turnover margin, they were 46th. Game 19, lost 16. Exactly what you expect in Navy. There's nothing that really stands out there, apart from maybe the defense was actually pretty damn good. That run defense was verging on elite. Well, was elite.
Yeah, that's Navy to a T. They practice every week against the run, so their defense just becomes naturally elite against the run. And then when a team passes the ball, suddenly they're deer in headlights and they don't know what to do. Their defensive backs panic when they're not in the box trying to stop the run. So, yep, that's pretty much midshipman football in a nutshell, for the good and for the bad. And yeah, you suppose you know what you've got to fix.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious with them. It always has been. It just depends how much they're going to try and change it this year. So the quarterback, Ty Lavatai, this is questionable. 6'2", 221 pounds. He's been the guy for most of the last 2 seasons. He's thrown for 1,236 yards, which may sound pitiful, but by service standards, that's actually quite a lot. 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He had 353 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground, but 7 fumbles as well in 2022. He got injured towards the end of last year. It was a season-ending injury to his knee. He didn't play in spring training at all, hence why he's not nailed the job down yet. His replacement Xavier Arline did well, but then he got injured playing lacrosse, of all sports. He's only just returning to training. He's not trained at all. And you've got Tedros Gleaton and Blake Horvath, who are 2 guys who have come in fighting for the job. So it's very much an open slot right now, but you would figure Lavatai will start due to if he's healthy, but at the moment he's not. Season preview in general. Ken Niumatalolo lost his job. It was for his playing style, which had reaped rewards for so many years, but he got figured out by the AAC. Is Newbury going to learn from his mistakes and freshen this offense up? And just how far can a rejuvenated Navy go in this all-change conference? Well, the answer to the first one appears to be yes. So there's a new offensive coordinator in the building. He goes by the name of Grant Chestnut. He has been offensive coordinator at Kennesaw State for 8 seasons. And for those who remember the Army preview that we did, Army went and got a new OC who runs the triple but has a passing aspect to it. Navy have done the same. So Kennesaw State run the triple, but they do have a legitimate passing aspect to it. So it appears that Navy are trying to make the same move away from the dead old-fashioned triple system. They need to sort out the quarterback first, but even if they don't, the system doesn't really require a world beater. Just someone who can come in, help run the ball, execute the odd pass every now and then. The fullback, Baba Fafana, he may only be 5'8", but he runs the ball harder than anyone else. He's back. He led the team in yards last season, had 769 yards, 6 touchdowns. They did lose their second leading rusher, McKeel Haywood, to Appalachian State, but pretty much everyone else is back, and to be honest, service teams, they have no trouble finding and replenishing the running back room at all. And the big thing, they'll be running behind an offensive line that returns 4 starters and nearly 70% of its snaps from last year. So the running attack will likely be minimum top 10 in the country once again. And on that line, the left guard Conor McMahon, he's the one to watch there. He's really good. In Jaden Umbarger, he'll be the focal point of the new passing offense. He had 265 yards on just 16 receptions last season, but they need more playmakers to step up if they ever truly want to present a threat that forces the teams to lighten up the box against the run. Defense, much healthier position, returns over 70% of its production from last year. The new DC is PJ Volker. He was their linebacker coach before. He's replaced Newbury in the DC job, so expect absolutely nothing to change scheme-wise. They were the best third down defense in the American. They were second in sacks. They were nationally elite run defense. On the D-line, they've got a high-level edge player in Jacob Busic. He had 6 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 3 forced fumbles last season. Donald Bernard, he's the leader of the vaunted run defense at defensive tackle. They lost their big linebacker, John Marshall. He had 20 tackles for loss and 11.5 sacks last year. It's a big loss for them, but they've got a new man to replace him, Colin Ramos. He takes charge of that room. He was second on tackles in the team last season. He had 4 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss of his own. He had a pair of forced fumbles as well. He's going to be the new leader of that midshipman defense. Secondary is actually loaded with veteran talent. You've got Rayon Lane, he's the lead safety, and BT Williams, he's the lead corner. Trouble is, with Navy not using the portal, it's hard to focus on the next group of guys coming through, so I can't tell you about more of their depth guys because they're all homegrown through the military. But with the running offense they have and the set players that they have on defense, they could, right, be an under the radar team this season.
Yeah, the fundamentals, like I say, have always been there, and even when their style of play is also predictable and one-dimensional, as you mentioned, like top 10 running offense, it don't mean you can stop it just because you know what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. It'll be interesting to see, though, how they tweak it. That's what I want to see. How do they grow this offense and become a little bit more explosive? That'll be the key to them being a good team that's you don't like playing against, to a team that can then come out with things and surprise you, and it's a team you hate playing against.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's can they evolve? It seems like all the service teams are trying. Is one of them going to be more successful? We will see. The schedule figures up okay. So, like we said, they play Notre Dame in Dublin in 2 weeks, which will be a fun test for them. They nearly beat Notre Dame last year, actually, so that might not be so cut and dry. Then they've got the bye. Then they're at home to Wagner. They're away at Memphis. Then they've got another bye. Then they're at home to South Florida and North Texas. Then they're on the road to Charlotte. They're at home to Air Force. Then another bye. They're away at Temple, at home to UAB, at home to East Carolina, then away to SMU. Then they have a final bye before they play Army in Foxborough in a game which Brent is going to look forward to again once more. Hopefully Army kick Navy's ass. But I mean, again, you're looking at the schedule here. Away at Charlotte, away at Temple, away at Memphis. It's not the hardest away slate. If you can win your home games and you can win a couple on the road, you could be an 8-9 win team on that schedule.
Yeah, it's not a bad schedule, like I say, and there's a chance for some. Like I say, they've got 2 big nationally televised games, so there's the chance to have eyes on you to turn up and put in a stellar performance. I think what they'll care about the most is they got swept in the Commander-in-Chief. They can't see that happen again. They have got to do better against Army and Air Force. That'll probably be what they care about the most this season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got to win those games. They're the source of a lot of pride, and a lot of your support wants to win those games, but it's eminently manageable for them. The player to watch, I mentioned him, the defensive end Jacob Busic, 6'4", 256 pounds, really good size for an edge rusher. Now in him, Navy may have found their own version of Andre Carter, if you remember the Army edge from a year or so ago. He's now entering his 3rd year on the team. It's his 3rd as a starter. Year 2, massive step up for him. Like I said, half a dozen sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 8.5 tackles for loss. grades out really well against the run. He's got the perfect size and frame for edge rushing. He's also just been made a team captain, which, you know, a lot of people are, but for a service team, that requires a high level of leadership, selflessness, speaks highly to the character of the player as well. So not only a great player on the field, but off it as well. I mean, in year 3, if you see a similar level leap, he might be the best edge rusher in the entire American. Maybe the G5, who knows? That is what his ceiling is. So watch out for Jacob Busic, the Navy midshipman edge rusher. Right, 2 teams left. We're nearly there. Ryan, you mentioned these teams, one of your favourites earlier. The North Texas Mean Green. They are up. Established 1913. Play at the Apogee Stadium. So another one of the new CUSA teams. They were 6-7. They went 5-3 in the CUSA in 2021. In 2022, they went 7-7. They were 6-2 in the CUSA. They were the runners-up of the whole thing. They lost to UTSA in the championship game. A body blow for them. The rivalry is with SMU. It's called the Safeway Bowl. Goes back to the days when one of the coaches said they'd play them in a Safeway parking lot, kind of a la Dan Campbell and how he goes on there. SMU lead that series 35-6-1, so it's kind of not really a rivalry so much as a massacre. The coach, another new coach. We got loads. We've not had many in these conference previews, but there's loads in the American. Eric Morris, first season, 37 years old. Ryan, you'll remember him because you watched the FCS a lot. Young offensive mind, started off as an assistant at Houston before taking over as inside wide receiver coach at Washington State. Got a promotion to Texas Tech as OC and wide receiver coach in 2013. He was the mastermind behind a certain 2015 offense at Texas Tech that ranked second in the entire nation and was led by a sophomore by the name of Patrick Mahomes. Have you ever heard of him before? Well, he was the guy behind that offense that year. He got his first head coach job in 2018 at Incarnate Word, spent 4 years there. He went 24-18. He won or took a share of the Southland Conference title twice. He moved to Washington State to be offensive coordinator in 2022. He followed Cameron Ward, his quarterback, there. Although the offense did rank 94th last year, it wasn't great. And then he got the head coach job after Seth Littrell was fired by North Texas last season. It'll be his first season as a head coach in the FBS. He's taken over a team that just made the CUSA championship game, but the conference level has gone up. So what will year 1 look like under him? Ryan, you'll have seen a lot of Eric Morris and Incarnate Ward. What do you make of this hire for North Texas?
It's an interesting one. Like I say, he's very offensively minded. Like I say, he's been part of mastermind of some really high-powered offenses. He's worked with some brilliant offensive players and minds throughout the years. But he's joining a team he's joining a winner, essentially. Like I say, a team that did get to its championship final. It did fall the final hurdle. But to come into a program that's just fired a coach after what they deemed was not good enough, that's a large weight of expectation for someone that's only 37 and not used to head coach experience. So you kind of feel like he's got to hit the ground running, or pressure will build actually fairly quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Seth Littrell just fired for making the championship. North Texas want titles, and that's what he's going to have to deliver. Not in year 1, but there we go. Grandizer, we've got 1 team left after this grand, so not much longer there. So the 2022 results, the team is taking over. They won away at UTEP, at home to Texas Southern, at home to Florida Atlantic and Louisiana Tech, away at Western Kentucky, and then at home to Florida International and Rice. The losses, away at home to SMU, away to UNLV, away to Memphis, away to UTSA, away to UAB, away to UTSA in the championship game, and versus Boise State in the bowl game. What I take from that is they don't like playing teams with abbreviated titles. That was all but one of the losses were to the guys there. And then the stats, and again, don't need to be Inspector Clouseau to work where this went wrong. Total offense, 21st in the nation, 461 yards per game. Total defense, 121st in the nation, 459 yards per game given up. So that poor offense that got 461 yards per game was only getting 2 yards per game more than the defense was giving up. The scoring offense was 28th. They got 34 points per game, but the scoring defense was 110th. They gave up 31.7 per game. Rushing offense, 25th in the nation, 200 yards a game, 24 touchdowns, 5.2 yards per carry. Rushing defense, 116th. They gave up 197 yards per game, 26 touchdowns, 4.8 yards per carry. The passing offense was 37th. The passing defense was 110th. In sacks for the team, they were 86th with 27. Tackles for loss, they were 115th with 63. But sacks allowed in the nation, they were 5th. They only gave up 11 sacks all year. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 13th. They only gave up 57th all year. They were 107th in turnover margin, though. They gained 16, they lost 22. It was like a game of one-upsmanship there, right? The offense, absolutely amazing, putting up stellar numbers, and the defense going, you know what, we can do that too, but in a bad way. Easy to see what went wrong here with North Texas.
How does a defense that bad make a championship? It's impressively bad that you can have such contrasting offense and defense and ride one of them all the way to a title game. Like, hats off to that defense. Like, you tried as hard as you could to blow it and still failed. So, yeah, it's on paper, it's pretty easy to see what he needs to fix. But he's also then got very high standards to maintain on the offense. They were pretty damn good rushing and passing the ball. So, try to fix one of them without neglecting or affecting the other. That's going to be a fine balance. He's got to get it right.
Yeah, and they don't have a 30-year-old quarterback to rely on this year either. I lie, he was 29, I think. So looking forward to this year, and Eric Morris is first in charge. The quarterback, and they did not too bad replacing Austin Allen. So they got Chandler Rogers, 6 foot, 200 pounds. So like I say, Austin Allen, he was 17th in the nation in passing yards last year. He had over 3,500. The offense went crazy. So they went and got themselves Rogers, who was the starting quarterback at Louisiana Monroe for the last 2 years. He had a decent 2022, threw for 2,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's also a dual threat guy, which Allen was not. He got 575 yards, 5 touchdowns on the ground for the Warhawks, but he did fumble 9 times, bringing his turnover count to 16, so that could do with coming down. But in Morris, he's got the perfect head coach to help make him take a step to the next level. I mean, it's not a bad replacement, right? You're replacing Austin Allen, who's been there forever. You get your center starter, who's been there a few years, and Chandler Rogers is not that bad a quarterback. Should be able to run the offense well.
Yeah, he's an established quarterback. And not to mention, Austin Allen, great quarterback. But long-term starter, no. One-dimensional, very much. I think you need to bring a bit more balance. Like I say, so I kind of like the direction they've gone in. It's different, but as a collective, it should work just as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives them a little bit more this season. So the quarterback is there, but what else does he have to work with? The season preview, they've been a winning underachiever in recent years in that they win plenty of games in the regular season, but they never win games of note. They've lost their last 6 bowl games, and they lost in the CUSA Championship last season. Now, the AD has marked out his position. They want titles and big bowl games. Can Morris be the guy to get them there? Well, the offense, it could be great again. So Jordan Davis is the OC. He's followed Morris around since his Incarnate Word days, so he's got a loyal general at his side there. Rogers, experienced starting QB, and he's going to be protected by one of the best offensive lines in the league, which was 5th and 13th, respectively, in sacks and tackles for loss allowed in the nation. 4 of the starters off that line are back, including a pair of really great guards. You've got the right guard Fabichi Newu, who's not given up a sack in 455 career pass snaps, and you've got the left guard Gabe Blair, who had an 80 grade season in 2022. The only guy they lost was the center Manasseh Mose to the draft. You may have heard us talk about him on this show a little bit, but they did pick up Arkansas State starting center Ethan Minor out the portal. Now, he's had sort of a meh career so far, but he's a very experienced option out the gate, so they've kind of made the replacement that they had to. They've brought in depth as well. Paula Vaiapulu had 350 snaps at left guard for Georgia Tech last year. Right tackle Larry Moore had snaps for Texas Tech. So you've got a lot of potential great depth pieces coming in to solidify an already great line. They've got 3 bona fide threats at running back. You've got last year's top 3 guys, so that's Ayo Adeyi, he had 807 yards, Ikaika Ragsdale, 755 yards, and Oscar Adaway III, 583 yards, all returning. Now the receiver unit's taken some hits. The second leading receiver, Jair Short, has gone to Auburn. The tight end Varkey's Gums, who was 3rd on the team in receiving yards, has gone to Arkansas. But the targets were kind of shared round all over, so there's a lot of good producers coming back, and the lead receiver Roderick Burns is one of them. And then you've got Damari Ward and Jay Macklin. They both had 400 yards on the season as well. You've got Trey Cleveland transferring in from Texas Tech. He had 2 100-plus yard games in the Big 12 last year and 350 yards overall. You've got Blair Conright coming from TCU, Jacqueline Carter coming from Illinois State. So it's a deep room at receiver as well. But like we said, the defense is where the improvements need to be made. They've got the players, but they've not utilised them so far. The new DC is Matt Capone. He's been training the secondary at Iowa State. And I mean, the Cyclones have produced good defenses in recent years. And the passing defense that ranked 110th last year, I mean, that gets the perfect defensive coordinator to remedy that. He comes from a successful system producing good secondary players. You've got Roderick Brown and Fatafehi Velea at tackle. Really good pair there, but they do need to tighten up against the run. They've got a top edge rusher in Mazine Richards. He had 7.5 sacks, 12.5 tackles for loss last year. You get Vikaril Alabuede from UMass. He's got experience there, just needs to up his production, but he's on a much better team this time. They lost a lot in the linebacker corps. KD Davis ran out of eligibility. He was a high-level do-it-all guy. And then Larry Nixon transferred to Auburn. So they're relying on depth guys to come in. They need them to turn into starters quickly. Secondary could be good, though. They lost their corner Deshaun Caddy to Ole Miss, but in Ridge Texada, he's one of the conference's best corners. He had 3 picks, 15 passes defended last year, and he leads a group of experienced sophomores and juniors. And Tariq Luckett, he had experience on 2 Pac-12 teams, so we've got a lot of experience in the corner room. And then Logan Wilson, their main man at safety, is back. And they even took UNLV starting safety Philip Hall out the portal. So they got a pair of bona fide starters there. So they've got the pieces on defense, Ryan. If they do, that offense is ready to go.
Yep, the offense hopefully shouldn't miss a beat with a quarterback that can be just as good through the air and hopefully better on the ground, as you mentioned. It all starts at the defensive front. They've had some turnover in the secondary, so getting pressure and applying pressure to quarterback, not giving them time to get cooking in the pocket is going to be massive. And then also not being fragile against the run. At times they would part like the Red Sea last year, so that's also going to be pretty crucial. So if they do maintain a good level of offense, I feel like the defensive front will be where games are won and lost this year for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100% it goes through that D-line. If that's good, I mean, again, yeah, maybe you're not looking at a dark horse, but you're looking at a team who can be in the upper echelons of the American for sure. The schedule, they don't play week 0, then they start at home to Cal, then they're away at Florida International and Louisiana Tech, then they're at home to Abilene Christie in the FCS game. Then the in-conference schedule, you're away at Navy, at home to Temple, away at Tulane, at home to Memphis and UTSA, away at SMU, away at Tulsa, at home to UAB. Now, that's a nasty stretch there. Away at Tulane, Memphis, UTSA at home, away at SMU. That's where the season lives or dies for them if they want to be a serious contender this year.
Yeah. They've got aspirations of straight back to the title game. It don't feel like a lot else will be acceptable. And it's not the easiest of schedules, so it's going to be a bit of a gauntlet at times. So this is going to be a very interesting team.
Yeah, it is. It's got a low floor and a high ceiling. and a lot of in between, so who knows where it's going to end. And to end it off, the player to watch, Fabici Newu, the right guard. He's 6'4", 316 pounds. He was a freshman All-American last year, had a terrific first season as a starter for the Mean Green. He didn't cough up a single sack. He gave up just 3 quarterback hits on over 430 pass blocking snaps, and he's moving out to tackle this year. That's the level of trust he's gained from his coaches. So you could well be looking at, if he breaks out this year at tackle as well as proving it at guard, it's only his second year. He's got 3 years to go before he hits the draft. This is a guy who will transfer sooner rather than later to a big program if he carries on. So Fabici Newu, keep an eye out for him, the right guard for North Texas. And finishing today's segment off, the first 7 teams, we've got David Reinfeldt was waiting for it. His wife went to Rice. We are now going to talk about the Rice Owls. 1912, they were established, a whole team. They play at Rice Stadium. Another import over from the CUSA. They were 4-8 and 3-5 in conference in 2021. They were 5-8 and 3-5 in conference in the CUSA the year after. So nothing changed, bar an out of conference win more. The rivalry with SMU, it's called the Battle for the Mayor's Cup. Houston, the Bayou Bucket Classic, and Texas. It's the loosest possible definition of a rivalry. Rice haven't beaten them since 1961, so kind of like a Notre Dame Navy situation, probably even worse than that. And we have another coach. This is probably the guy who's on the hottest seat in the conference, maybe. So you got Mike Bloomgren, 6th season, 46. He's offensively minded. Spent time with the Jets on their coaching staff in the NFL from 2007 to 2010. Moved to the college game with Stanford. Worked his way through the ranks over 6 years to OC. And then in 2018, he got the call for his first head coach job at Rice. But it has not been a good tenure so far. After 5 years, he's 16 and 39 overall. He's 12 and 25 in the CUSA, so he's had just 4 wins out of conference in 5 seasons. Last year's 5 wins represents the most in a season for him, but that was just a 1-win increase from 2021. And they were sat at 5-4 before they had a 4-game losing streak to end the season, so the opportunity was there and not taken. You kind of have to figure here, Rye, the Reaper's circling, and this might be the one where an 0-2 or an 0-3 start does in for a coach very quickly.
Yeah, with that record, he's pretty fortunate to even get this season. And it explains why, well, we're going to talk about he's really rolled the dice with the guy he's brought in to try save his ass. So this, for me, is the most interesting head coach quarterback combination in the AAC. It's going to be fascinating to see how this pans out, because he's relying on a guy to save his job.
Oh yeah, absolutely, big time. We'll talk about him in a second. The team he had in 2022, though, the wins at home to McNeese State, Louisiana, and UAB, away at Louisiana Tech, and at home to UTEP. The losses away at USC, Houston, and Florida Atlantic, at home to Charlotte, away at Western Kentucky, at home to UTSA, away at North Texas, and versus Southern Miss in a bowl game. They only got to a bowl game without 6 wins because of their academic rating, getting them one of the last positions in there, and Southern Miss absolutely trucked them. The 2022 stats, I mean, really, we've got a good balance here. The total offense was 77th at 374 yards per game. The total defense, 76th. 390 yards per game they gave up on average, so pretty. But then things changed. So the scoring offense was 84th, 25.2 points per game. The scoring defense was 121st. They gave up 34.1 points per game, so they didn't give up so many yards in games, but they gave up a whole load of points. The rushing offense was 81st. The rushing defense was 104th. They were not good either side of the ball for this one. They gave up 4 yards per carry against the run. The passing offense was 65th, just 232 yards per game, 23 touchdowns. The passing defense was 38th, 208.6 yards per game and 29 touchdowns. In team sacks, they were 87th with 25. Team tackles for loss, they were 111th with 60. Sacks allowed, they were 92nd with 35. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 67th with 74. So again, not great trenches either side of the ball. And the turnover margin, 128th. They gained 19 turnovers, but they lost the ball 32 times. Turnovers, big ass problem there, right, for them.
Yeah. And that's why they were conceding so many points but not good up yards, because teams were scoring off short yardage. They were getting the ball back at like the 20-yard line, or like they were turning the ball over in their own red zone or the end zone, and then teams were scoring without having to put up any yards. So it's a recipe for disaster. Turning the ball over in your own half, more often than not, always leads to points, and that was their downfall for most of the year. And that's the biggest thing. That's the number one issue to fix, is keeping the ball.
And sorting your trenches, because you can't afford for this quarterback to get hit too much. I'm going to talk about him now. So the 2022 season is done. 2023, Ryan said it so eloquently. Mike Bloomgren, he has sent out an SOS. He has fired the flare in the air, and he has taken on JT Daniels. You'll all remember him, the former future superstar, whose college career was effectively killed by a serious knee injury back in his second year at USC, after which he transferred to Georgia. He won the starting job, but a further injury, I think it was his oblique, opened the door for none other than Stetson Bennett to come in and take that job, and he went on to win 2 natties on the back of that. JT transferred in 2022 to West Virginia, became starter, but he got pulled towards the end of the season amidst ongoing struggles. He had 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He had 6 fumbles as well. I mean, going into this is his last year. He has one last chance to show that he can be the guy for somebody, and if he's not, he better be careful, because AJ Padgett was the relief QB last season for Rice. He had over 600 yards, so if Daniels continues to struggle, he may find he loses yet another starting gig. JT Daniels, right, this one raised a few eyebrows when he went there, but he's lost 2 starting jobs in a row. Massive expectation about him back in the day. Could this be the stop that saves him?
I hope so, because I do feel sorry for him. I feel like his career's had a bit of a nosedive, and it's a lot of it not really been his own fault. It's just been unfortunate injuries. I like the partnership because, like I say, it's last chance saloon, last bit of eligibility, last chance to show that he's a future clipboard holder, UDFA, XFL, USFL guy. Pro football could still be in his career, but he's kind of got to show something this year. Like I say, he wasn't terrible at West Virginia, but he also wasn't great either. So the Rice Owls need a quarterback. He needs a team that's willing to let him maybe have his redemption story. This will go one of 2 ways. Great year, ends his year, or he gets yanked and he doesn't even play all the games this season, and acrimoniously, that will be the last that we hear of the JT Daniels saga. So, yeah, it's very much going to be an all or nothing kind of year for him.
I'm the same, I'm pulling for him. I remember that first game last year, the backyard brawl against Pittsburgh when he was with West Virginia. He actually looked so good, and you're like, oh, hang on, this is maybe the JT I expect to see here. He had a great game despite getting absolutely pummeled by that Pittsburgh D-line, and then it flatlined so quickly, and it was like, oh, it's such a shame for him, but I'm rooting for him. I hope JT brings it there at Rice. Brent goes, that's a lot of turnovers. Where did they rank in that category? Well, they ranked dead last in the country, Brent. 32 turnovers was the worst. The next was Northwestern with 31, and then after that it was Central Michigan with 28. So they were first by like 4 compared to most everybody else. It was absolutely awful the amount of turnovers they had there. The season preview, like I've said, it's make or break for Bloomgren, and that's why he's gone for JT. JT is not a long-term building piece. He's a guy who, if he hits and fulfills his potential, can win you a lot of games and save your job. And if he fails, well, like the captain of the Titanic, you're all going down fault. Together. Yeah. It's like the captain of the Titanic, they're all going to go down. They're going to be the band playing with one another as the ship sinks. That's going to be the way it goes. A big season is required. The key is protecting JT. The O-line cannot allow him to be sacked anywhere near 40 times this season. Brings back 64% of last year's snaps, so there is experience to count on, but the quality needs to get better. They lost their centre, Shea Baker. He ran out of eligibility. He was the only guy on the line to grade above 53 last year. He had a 69 grade by PFF. So they need to get much better. The left tackle, Brant Banks, comes in from Nebraska. He's seen rotational snaps there. They've brought in Lavelle Dumont from Toledo. God, there's a lot of Toledo guys coming to the American this year. He had a starting season at right tackle in 2021. He had a good number of reps at right guard last year, but he gave up 8 sacks in 2021 and he didn't grade great last year. So the entire line and even the improvements brought in from the portal need to get significantly better. The running back room is solid. The leading rusher, Cameron Montgomery, ran out of eligibility, but Ari Broussard is back. He had 9 rushing touchdowns last year. Juma Atovianu was running at a healthy 5.7 yards per carry, so he'll look to step into that void as well. Receiving room, massive loss. Bradley Rosner transferred to NC State. He was by far their leading receiver, but they do bring in Matt Sykes from the transfer portal. He was in the rotation at UCLA last year, so he's looking for a starter opportunity, but he's got good experience behind him. Luke McCaffrey is back. He led the team in targets last year. He had over 700 yards. They've got a good pass-catching tight end in Jack Bradley, so the room is decent enough for JT to work with. On defense, they've got to get better against the run, but the defensive line is a big work in progress. They've got a nose tackle, Isaiah Floyd, who is good. DeBraylon Carroll, he's one of those sort of hybrid role guys. He's had 3 years of steady improvement there, mostly on the interior. They've brought in Michael Larby from Duke. He has seen playing time in the Power 5 for the Blue Devils, but they are shorn of starters there, which is the problem. The edge room is also thin. It's badly in need of some emerging playmakers. Their top sack guy last year, Ekina Inachukwu, he's with the Falcons in the NFL now. They've brought in a very interesting transfer from Colgate, Coleman Coco. He's going to look to make an impression at the next level. He's a great run defender on the edge. He's an emerging pass rusher as well. He might be a standout name sooner rather than later. The linebacker room, though, is really strong. They've got a lot. They have a lot of these outside linebacker hybrids. Josh Piercy, he had 6.5 sacks, which led the team. 10 tackles for loss, which also led the team. They've got a really good coverage linebacker in Myron Morrison. He had 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups last season. And in Chris Conti, they've got like the tackling machine at the heart of them all. So the linebackers are the strength of this defense by a long way. Secondary needs to find more consistency. Hopefully starts with a better pass rush. But they've got good players to build around. The Corden Jordan Dunbar, he had 10 pass breakups last season. Could have an even better season this time round. And Gabriel Taylor, he's the hard-hitting safety they have. He had a pair of picks and forced fumbles last year. They've just got to find depth around them. I mean, it's make or break, but it still just feels like there's too many holes. They just can't get that D-line going. And that's going to be ultimately what makes or breaks them again this year, right?
Yeah, the lines are worrying. The JT Daniels could be the best quarterback in the conference, but you've got to keep him upright. You've got to give him pass pro. You've got to create a pocket for him, because I've watched a few of Ice games last year. I'm pretty sure Luke McCaffrey, I'm pretty sure his dad is Ed, one of the the old NFL stars,
Yeah.
like say the Broncos. Yeah, so he knows he's got blood in the line of being a good receiver, and him and JT could click really quickly. But yeah, the worries about pass injury concerns, taking a lot of hits, how the offensive line performed last year. JT will know that he's taking a risk coming here, and he could get absolutely pummeled. But yeah, I hope they do well by him, and they're stronger and they withstand against the pass rush. And on the other side of the ball, yeah, they do need to help. Like I said, the turnover battle, they lost a lot, but also they didn't really get any either, because they didn't get to the quarterback and they didn't get tackles for loss. They didn't get the running back to cough the ball up or the QB to fumble it or force him. They didn't have to hurry any passes. So a secondary can only be as good as the defensive front. If the defensive front don't get there, the secondary will never get any turnovers and the QB will just find constant success. So it feels like the repeating story of this entire AAC. Trenches. Like I said, defensive lines that just do not get to the quarterback. But we've talked about some good linebackers, some good edge rushers. Like I said, but you've got the defensive line has got to make holes for them to get through. If they do that, they might find a little bit of success. And Rice, they're not the dark horse, but they certainly could surprise us this year. JT could have a swan song if things go right. But the things that need to happen are essentially going to be out of his control, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think everyone is. Even in the chat is Lisa. Lisa's given up her college fandom here. She says she's a Georgia fan. We did not know that, so we have a Bulldog in the building. She goes, I'm rooting for JT as well. Obviously, he was always well liked at Georgia. It was just the injuries. But, Stetson just made one of the most improbable leaps ever from a walk-on to go and win all that, so it's a shame. Brent goes, the Backyard Brawl was one of the best games I watched live last year. Ditto, loved it. They could get help in the portal, but it's quite late now. Season starts in 2 weeks, so it's very hard to get these guys ready. You kind of got to go with what you've got. Now, the schedule, how does it read for them? They don't play week 0. They start away at Texas, which you can probably write off. Then they're at home to Houston and Texas Southern. Then they're away to South Florida, at home to East Carolina, at home to UConn, away at Tulsa, at home to Tulane and SMU, away at UTSA and Charlotte, then at home to Florida Atlantic. I mean, that home schedule is where it makes or breaks. East Carolina, UConn are a good team, Tulane, SMU. That's a tough home slate, and if they want to surprise people this year, you've got to run that home slate really, and then pick up some shocks on the road as well.
Yeah, a team devoid of confidence. If they start dropping games early at home, the road trips, they could be very demoralising. Long trips, not full of confidence. That will be the story of the derailing, and the head coach, he'll be out of work very quickly if they start losing their home games. The fans will turn ever so quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you start away at South Florida and at home to East Carolina in the conference schedule. You lose both of those. I reckon that's all she wrote. I don't reckon it's going to take much for them this season. The player to watch, the outside linebacker Josh Piercy. He's 6'2", 243 pounds. This outside linebacker, he's going to be critical to a team who, one, needs more sacks and needs more plays against the run last year. So he's got 13 sacks and 3 forced fumbles in his last 2 seasons. Always grades solidly above average against the run. With hopefully some more pieces on the D-line this season, it'll open up even more opportunities to make plays. He shouldn't be seeing a big bulk of the blockers like he usually does, because he's one of the main blockers. He also does some work in the slot as well. So plays on the edge, plays at linebacker, plays in the slot. The positional versatility will really help him stand out. And, if he has another great season, Josh Piercy at Rice is the guy to watch there. And with that all said and done, that is the first half of the American done. Some very intriguing teams this year. And like we said at the start of this, we said it's impossible to figure out who's going to be at the top of this because there's a power void at the top. And after that, it's still very difficult to predict who's going to be up there at this moment. Like, the good teams you would expect to be there are rebuilding. And then, like, the better CUSA teams, it's like, can they be good in the American? It's very tough to call at the moment.
I think we know who's going to be bad.
Yeah.
But other than that, we don't really know who's going to be. There seems to be a lot of average teams. Someone's going to have to pull away. If someone's going to challenge, like, say, Tulane, of the teams we've named today, how many are legitimate title contenders? I can't really say over the FAU. Like I say, we've got a lot of average. But one of them will be absolutely terrible, and one of them will probably turn out to be absolutely great. So we never know. That's kind of why I like the American, because little to no front runners or favourites or real standout dynasties, powerhouses. Yeah. So it makes it interesting.
Yeah, and say a big smorgasbord of opportunists in there, and we'll see some more of those next week. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting conference this year. Like I say, the complete power void. Who is going to do it? Well, we'll talk about the conference, the reigning conference champions next week, the two-time CUSA champions next week. There's a lot of good to come there. David Ranford goes, thank you, my wife enjoyed the analysis. I'm glad. I'm glad people enjoy these. So thank you ever so much. That's everything for today. Appreciate everyone who has joined in with us. I know these are a little long, but I like to do these properly. G5 teams don't get a lot of spotlight put on them, and it feels a little bit of a disservice to just skip over them. So we try and do proper in-depth things for these. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. You've learned a bit more about the American this week, some players to keep an eye on, some teams to keep an eye on. And we will be back to finish off the conference next week. Just remains for me to go through. If anyone's got any questions before we get out of here, quickly put them in the chat. I will just go through all the housekeeping things. So the next podcast will be back in a few hours, the main Roar of the Lions UK podcast, because Detroit Lions football is back, baby. We will be playing the Giants in the preseason. You will get some live reactions during that game. Come and chat Lions with us. Come talk Khalif Raymond's new contract. Come talk whatever you want to. We will always be here to have a chat with. We appreciate all you who join us. But in terms of the next main podcast, it'll be Monday coming. We'll be talking about the Giants preseason game and anything that's gone on other than that. And then me and Ryan will be back soon with the college football podcast to finish off our preview of the American. And we are getting close to the season now, so we will be starting to talk a bit more about some of our favourite players this year, and we will have our predictions show. We're going to be predicting all the conferences, Heisman winners, Biletnikoff winners. We're going to really put our college knowledge to the test, and you guys come along with us, join the ride, bring us your thoughts as well. It's going to be a lot of good fun. You know where to find us online: Twitch, YouTube, all that sort of stuff. Just search in Roar of the Lions UK, look for Hank's beautiful face there, and then you will find us. So thank you for everyone who has joined. I will see you Sunday, Dan. Absolutely, looking forward to it already. Thank you, Dan, David, everyone who's joined us there, and in YouTube, to Brent, to Lisa. Hatter's House is in the building. Hope you're doing well. I don't know what Khalif's contract is at the minute, Lisa. We'll get back to you during the mainstream later. So, yeah, hopefully you can join us then. Appreciate you all. Have a lovely weekend if we don't talk to you during the game stream, and we'll see you back on this podcast next week. So, thank you ever so much, and we will see you again very soon. One Pride.